Welcome to Convo Blueprint. I'm your host, Zion. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to react to the interview between Andrew Tate and Piers Morgan. He has it titled Andrew Tate versus Piers Morgan, the full interview. And to give a little background, the controversial social media figure Andrew Tate joins Piers Morgan uncensored for one of the most anticipated interviews of the year. Piers wanted to find out who the real Andrew Tate is after King of Toxic Masculinity was after the King of wait, yep. Oh, they didn't put the in there, but I put it in there. After the King of Toxic Masculinity was deplatformed from social media for his inflammatory views. In this full-length, uncut, and uncensored talk, they discuss love, marriage, mental health, fame, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's get into it and react. I don't have, just off the top, I don't have a lot of experience with Andrew Tate. I know Piers Morgan to be a journalist, but I don't really, necessarily agree or align with their party politics or anything of that nature, or agree with or disagree with their opinions. I don't know enough about them. I didn't really know much about Andrew Tate until he got banned, so to speak, which in many ways, maybe this worked out for his benefit to where now, you have to pay to, his membership. Maybe I guarantee you his membership on his website probably blew up after him being canceled. But let's get into it.
On Piers Morgan Uncensored, one of the most infamous men in the world, Andrew Tate's misogynistic tirades have been viewed billions of times online. He's now been effectively banned, though, from the internet. He doesn't think that's fair. Tonight, I'm going to try and work out if it is.
From London, this is Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Well, good evening from London and welcome to a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Andrew Tate, one-on-one. He's the most famous man you probably never heard of, with billions of views online. At one point this year, more people were searching Google for Andrew Tate than Donald Trump or Kim Kardashian. A former professional kickboxer, he was kicked off Big Brother in 2016 after a video emerged of him striking a woman, in what they now both claim was a consensual sex game. He's since made millions as a pornographer and casino owner in Romania, but it's his online videos that have made him notorious across the world. Posing as a playboy with fast cars, cigars, weapons, and cash. He rants about his often scandalous views on women.
Or instruct a female to provide sustenance. Cook.
So I think my sister is her husband's property, yes.
Tells young men they can get as rich as him by paying for his digital life lessons.
I have 100 business tips I'm going to teach you, which will allow you to make your own money instantly.
But amid a global media backlash, the net has closed on Andrew Tate. While millions still share his videos, he's effectively banned from the web, booted off Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To his fans, he's a misunderstood satirist and the victim of big tech censorship. To many others, he's a malicious misogynist. Tonight, I'll try and get to the truth. Well, some of the opinions Andrew Tate shares in his videos are undeniably deeply offensive. We're going to show you some of them on this show. I think you should see them for yourself, not simply hear what he says about them or what other people say about them. Tens of millions of people across the world follow Andrew Tate, and with a big following comes a big responsibility, as well as a public interest in holding his views to account. If outrageous opinions are read aloud, they can be challenged and exposed for what they are. If they're silenced, the person holding these views can become a martyr. So that's why I invited Andrew Tate to come here tonight, and he joins me now live. So Andrew, well, welcome, first of all. You come all the way from Romania to do this interview.
Correct.
What do you hope to achieve from this interview? Why are you here?
It'd be interesting to have a conversation with you. You've certainly been the subject of your own divided opinions in the world. There's a lot of people who would say some of the things.
He came out the gate swinging, right? Yes, because Piers Morgan can also be considered a polarizing figure, just like Andrew Tate. As we're getting into this, if you enjoy this type of content, if you're enjoying what Convo Blueprint with Zion is doing, I did a show last night about, what did I do a show about last night? Dang, I got to look that quick. I forgot about Kirk Franklin. and his comments, basically his rap lyrics at the BET Awards, where he says the lion and the lamb will bow down to the goat. If you didn't hear about that, I had a friend send me a message Facebook yesterday, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a video about this. So check that video out. Give me a like and subscribe, and even share this content if you like what we have going on here. And if you have any ideas about any type of videos that I should do, or you want to react to, or you want to be a guest on the show, go ahead and send me an email. I'm on Facebook. One of the easiest ways to find all of my social links is ibelievetemple.com. The word believe, temple.com. Thank you. Let's keep it rolling.
Things you say are perhaps dangerous or toxic. So I thought you'd be a good person to speak to about this subject.
I didn't know much about you before this year, and then I suddenly became very aware of you, as the world did, because, as I said earlier, you were the #1 subject searched on Google ahead of Donald Trump. I didn't think it was even possible. Why did you get suddenly so popular / infamous, do you think?
I exploded. I certainly didn't do that with magic. I've been on the internet for a very long time. I think in the world we live in now, as the other side, the people who disagree with me, as they get more and more tyrannical in their censorships and their hate mobs, etc., as standard masculine practices are deemed toxic, I didn't put a magic spell on everybody. I managed to accumulate a large amount of affinity with the male populace across the Western world, because I'm simply saying things that many men believe, think, and feel.
The problem, I would say, is I want to play you just a clip off the top. This is from Joe Rogan, who's somebody I absolutely love.
Sure.
Within what he just said, it depends on what you define as masculine. And later on, he's going to get into it. But I want you to be thinking about that. Like, what is masculinity? Because I feel that a lot of people are sort of creating like this victimhood kind of idea that, oh, it's hard to be a man, and you can't do anything that manly men do, and that the emasculation of men is a real thing. And I think it is, but not in the way that it's crafted for us to consume. I personally believe emasculation of men is more towards a man not being able to provide for his family, or to be able to provide for himself, not earning a living wage. I think these are the things that lead to emasculation, not the things that Andrew Tate seems to represent on his platforms. But, just be aware of that as we go on, and feel free to chime in at any time. And we can put your comments up on the screen and share your ideas about Andrew Tate and Piers Morgan.
And I think it explains to me what I presume my issue with you is going to be, right?
Correct.
And you
right,
you have absolutely got the right to try and persuade me otherwise.
Sure.
But Joe Rogan said this about you.
My 12-year-old and my 14-year-old asked me about Andrew Tate.
And
my
what'd you
14-year-old
say? What'd you say?
I said he's a legit world champion kickboxer. I go, I like him a lot. Why do you like him? And I was asking him. They said he says a lot of funny stuff on Twitter and TikTok. He f***ed up with the misogynist stuff.
Yes.
Because if he didn't do that, if he just did the pro-male stuff.
If you shop on Amazon, you should use this tool. It's a browser extension
Sorry
that
about this, y'all.
automatically compares Amazon
Maybe I need to get YouTube
other
Premium. Nah, I'm good. Oh, I don't know if y'all saw, but recently I seen something about YouTube. Basically, they're thinking about charging people to stream 4K content now. I'm like, dang, everybody trying to get more money out of us.
So I thought that was interesting, because when I've gone over everything that's been at the center of the debate about Andrew Tate, I come down with Joe Rogan in the sense that there's a lot of stuff you say I agree with. I've got 3 sons in their 20s. It's not easy actually being a young male in the modern world. And I think a lot of the things that you say about that can resonate with them. Yeah. The problem comes with the, I don't know, 10, 20% or whatever of your output, which on the face of it appears to be blatant misogyny. And when you couple that with your massive influence and huge reach, that is why the social media companies have decided to effectively cancel you. I don't believe in cancellation. I don't believe in censorship particularly. That's why I've invited you to come on the show. But I do think a lot of the things you've said are blatant misogyny. Do you accept that?
So you made a very interesting point there. You just said on the face of it appeared to be blatantly misogynistic. I understand that on the face of some of the long format content I've made, if you're going to take a few seconds out of hours, chop it up, put it all over social media, accompanied with my massive fame, then things can absolutely not be taken out of context. I do not hate women in any regard. I have no negative relationship with women. No women have come forward saying I've hurt them. I have no criminal record for hurting women. There's no way I can be seen as the face or the devil in regards to how men treat women on the planet. I'm absolutely and utterly the opposite. I believe in protecting and providing. I've been misunderstood. There's been large contingents of people.
I feel like, for the sake of conversation, let's go on and define misogynistic. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, misogynistic means strongly prejudiced against women, deeply ingrained misogynistic attitudes. So if a person is misogynistic, it's a person who hates or discriminates against women. A misogynistic person, these comments attempt to cut much deeper, striking women at what misogynists see as their most valuable characteristics: appearance, sexual purity, sweetness, and submissiveness. Okay, so let's see if Andrew Tate qualifies as a misogynist. What do you think? Do you know of him already before this interview, before he got canceled? I do think it's interesting that much of today's media, like everything in media, is targeted towards children. I think about when I was growing up, the rap music. Remember when Eminem first came out, his first songs and stuff. I remember, as a kid that as a young man, dang, it's been so, I'm 40 now, so I don't know. I'm doing the math in my head, but his sound was very childlike. Hi, my name is, he rapped to kids in his lyrics. So it's interesting that Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate was such an internet phenomenon that his Joe Rogan's kids knew him for saying wild and crazy things on the internet. Isn't that something that, the things that celebrities say with their platform become I can't even talk. With their platform, there's an increased responsibility for them to know what they're saying. I also think that as this conversation develops, it makes me think about rap music. It makes me think about other forms of so-called entertainment that are destructive to our young people. What do you think?
People who have tried very hard to purport lies about me. And the truth of the matter is, I've been producing content for a very long time. Hours and hours of videos been cut down to 2 or 3 seconds of clip. Those clips have gone viral and people misunderstand me.
But I think you use this phrase and be taken out of context. And I'm not sure that is correct, in the sense that it still comes out of your mouth. And some of the things some of the things you've said, I just think are blatantly.
Well, let's do them. Let's hear them.
Let's go through some.
Sure.
Right. So you said this about Me Too / rape. This is probably 40% of the reason I moved to Romania. In Eastern Europe, none of this garbage flies. You go to the police and say, he raped me back in 1988. They'll say, well, you should have done something about it back then.
Yeah, so the point I was making was obviously at the height of the Me Too scandal, and also if we look at Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, there's been a lot of high-profile cases where men have been accused of things they did not do without evidence, and their lives have been completely and utterly destroyed.
Right.
When I say these things, people sit and say that, oh, he hates women. I don't hate women. I think rape is disgusting. I would take a stronger stance on rape than the British government. I think these people should face the death penalty. But to sit and say that women without evidence can go forward and just make up accusations against men, even though they've been repeatedly proven to destroy men's lives at will, is absolutely and utterly.
What about a woman who was raped back in 1988 and goes to the police?
Then the man should face absolute and complete justice.
But you understand that when that clip appears on TikTok as a clip, and all right,
as a clip, completely.
Okay, but it's still something that came out of your mouth. Do you accept that when that appears on TikTok, a lot of young, maybe not as smart as you, young men, right, impressionable teenagers, will read that and go, what's he saying here? Is he saying that rape doesn't exist?
No, I completely. I'm not going to sit here as a professional and say that I can't be taken out of context. What I will say is that one small sentence you've taken was from a 1-hour video where I explained that, of course, rape is disgusting. Of course, everybody should be punished for their.
Now, this could be considered a problem with social media and basically technology, right? Like with the invention of TikTok. I deleted TikTok. I'm going to do a show about, that particular platform. Did you know it's a Chinese company? That's not why I deleted it. But what I found out to be interesting is that in China, TikTok only allows certain viewership. Basically, they only allow hardworking Chinese to basically, they only allow young people to see hardworking Chinese citizens. So, you know how you may download TikTok in America and it's just ratchet teens doing ratchet things, and people of all ages, but that's basically what you see on there. A whole bunch of nakedness, a whole bunch of just gyrating and dancing. And I'm not going to say there's not educational stuff on there too, because there are educational channels, but that's not what the multitude is. And even though people want to say, oh, you're only getting shown the things that you like as far as the algorithm, that's only true to a certain extent. So there's a whole algorithm science between them showing videos that you don't like to show you videos that you do like, and to get you to stay on until you get that another hit of dopamine. So it's not just, oh, they're showing you ratchet things because you liked other ratchet things. That's not true when it comes to the TikTok algorithm. But with this shorter form content and even YouTube Shorts, right? A lot of media, if you're doing Joe Rogan podcast or Andrew Tate podcast, and you're doing 6 hours, 4-hour podcasts, generally speaking, people are not going to devote that much time to it, so they're going to trim it down. And then you do have these sound bites, so you can be taken out of context. But there are certain things that you can't take out of context, meaning you said what you said. So even framing it in a larger context doesn't change the meaning of why you said it. And we're going to see that outplay. I did not watch this whole interview, but I watched about half of it before doing the show.
Their crimes regardless of when they happen, but people are not perfect, male and female. And if you give women the opportunity to destroy men's lives without evidence, there's going to be a contingent of women who will do that. I'm trying to make a balanced and nuanced argument in a world where people have no attention span. They're going to take a few seconds, put it online, decide someone's good or bad, not be interested in the longer format video. And here I am. No, I'm certainly a person who takes personal responsibility. That's who I am as a person. But we live in a world now with TikTok videos 5 or 6 seconds long. There's no content.
Do you think women are the property of men?
No. The point I was making.
Why have you?
One could argue that Andrew Tate is even an internet phenomenon. Like he said, he's been doing content for a long time. But it is like even his Joe Rogan's 14-year-old, let's just use that, right? Knows him from saying wild and crazy things online. It's those shorter form things that got Andrew Tate on Piers Morgan right now, that got him canceled, but that got him this it allowed him to amass a great following of millions of views. Now, if that's real, right? I think I've seen something talking about 80% of Twitter followers are bots or whatever. We know that you can buy likes. There's troll farms. You can buy you can buy views and all of that. So if he did generally amass this great following or large following, it was largely because of saying these wild and crazy things that even Joe Rogan's son knows about. Let me know what you think in the comments. Am I off base? And do you think he's a misogynist or not? Do you think so? Just based off of what you may have known of him already. Did you know Andrew Tate before he got canceled? I didn't know much of him.
You said they are.
Because I made a religious point. I said that when a man marries a woman, the woman's father walks her down the aisle, and hands her away to the man. Traditionally, this is what it says in the Bible. I'm a religious person. I believe in God. I live in the most religious country in the world.
So you do think that the woman becomes the man?
I think she takes his last name.
I mean, let's watch the clip that you said about
Sure.
this so that we can get it in context.
So I think my sister is her husband's property, yes. When a bride is walking down the aisle to marry the groom, the father walks next to her and gives her away. True or false?
Absolutely.
But I've been married twice, as it turns out.
Before they break that down, let me know what you think. Does the father give away his daughter to the husband? And when people talk about the scripture, I love always to go to the scripture and figure out You know, where you I would have asked, what scripture does it say that? You know, where I can paraphrase. I know the Bible, and so I can paraphrase, you know, where he would be coming from, but I would need him to explain that since he's the one who said it. But when I think this idea of submission, the church has really got this wrong as well, in my opinion. Over in Ephesians. So like let me share this. Because I feel like it's very important. If we're gonna have this conversation, then let's have it in the proper manner, right? Wives and husbands. I feel like the church has got this wrong a lot. I think, you know, we go to church and we hear wives submit to your husbands, but we don't hear like the not enough emphasis is put on the masculine part. I like the Tree of Life version. Let's go here. If we want another one, we can read another one. So let's talk about it. Orderly relationships. It says also submit yourselves to one another out of reverence for Messiah. Wives to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Messiah also is head of his community, himself the savior of the body. But as the Messiah's community is submitted to Messiah, so also the wives to their husbands in everything. Okay? Husbands, love your wives just as Messiah also loved his community and gave himself up for her to make her holy, having cleansed her by immersion in the world. That's where I wanted to highlight. And we can go to like the King James Version, right? There's some people who are like, oh, King James Version only. But this point right here is more important than anything. So for a man to put the emphasis on a woman and say, I'm the head of the household and you got to submit to me, there's more submission actually required from the husband than the wife. If we want to measure it that way, you know, I feel like it's immature that I have to say it that way, but because misogyny has been taught in the church and women are seen as property by some believers, we have to clarify it this way. And we'll go ahead and finish this part. Messiah did this so that he might present to himself his glorious community, not having a stain or wrinkle or any such thing, but in order that she might be holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Let's go to the King James. Oh, it is in alphabetical order, right? Here we go. Let's just read 25 through 28. Husbands, love your wives just as Messiah also. Wait, it didn't switch. Did it? There we go. Husband, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. So look at the responsibility of the man, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. So I just wanted to highlight that there's more emphasis actually put on the man and the responsibility as the head than, you know, it's often most taught, like, you know, the wife need to submit to the husband and all this stuff. I just wanted to share that piece because in my opinion, I believe it's something that the church could do better at large. You know, I'm not trying to condemn or judge every church, but I think at large, there could be more responsibility put on the man than the woman for submission. You see what I'm saying? Or else the scripture wouldn't have described the woman as the helpmeet. And, you know, I've already done I don't like labels. so I'm not going to use none of the major terms today, but I'm a same gender loving man, and I believe that that glorifies the Most High. Me and the Most High are good, and yeah, I've done a few videos about that, and if you ever want to come on and talk about that, I'm down for that too. But there's a requirement for submission of both people to the Most High, and that's how I square that up. But let's keep it moving.
Out, and on both occasions, I didn't believe that the woman was being handed to me as chattel, as property.
Perhaps the way the reason I'm asked that question repeatedly, and I'm asked in a loaded way.
So would you rephrase what you said there?
Now, that's an interesting point about phrasing. The way I would say things before I was famous, I have to take personal responsibility and accept that if I make a video that 500 people see and 1% of them misunderstand it, that's not a problem. If I make a video that 5 million people see and 1% of them understand.
So specifically on that point, I think my sister is her husband's property.
She took his last name. She married him. She wanted to join his family. She has said it herself.
Right. So she's
still a sovereign individual. She's absolutely not a sovereign individual.
Property means that the husband owns your sister.
Listen, my friend, if we want to argue.
Yes. I also think, in a way, Andrew Tate he's telling the truth right here, but he's also trying to make it seem like he's a victim. That, you know, you are accountable for what you say. And this was his job. You know what I mean? Like, he would go on the internet, say these things. He has these followings. And so to use the word property, like Andrew Tate knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? It's like Kanye. I'm going to do a video about Kanye going on Tucker Carlson, wearing the White Lives Matter shirt and all that. It's like Kanye pulling these stunts so he could stay in the public eye. That's how Andrew Tate got famous. So he knows what he's doing. And now that he's being called on it, you know, he doesn't want to back down because that will ruin his fan base. That's my opinion. What do you think? I think he doesn't want to admit wholeheartedly, and like he may do it like a soft admission, whatever that is. Like, he may say, oh, I could have said it another way, but like, you'll see that he don't want to back down from this. Look,
about this, you need to go back to the Bible, to the Quran. You need to argue with religious.
No, I'm not talking about anything in the Bible or Quran.
But that's what it says.
No, I'm asking you what you think.
I think that if a woman marries a man and she decides to take his last name, that they have different roles and responsibilities within that marriage. And I believe that's
not the question.
She is.
So he tries to, you know, politicize or give a politician answer. I also think it's up to the two individuals in the marriage to determine what that looks like. Because the Most High created Eve to be a helpmeet. So depending on the purpose of the man and the mission of the man, that relationship might look different. I think that what he's doing is just, you know, he's purporting a conservative idea of masculine and feminine roles, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's the marriage that you and your partner want. But he also tries to bring the scripture in here to sort of grandstand. He tries to bring the Bible and the Quran. Let me not say scripture because he didn't name one, but he said this is what he believes that's in the Bible and the Quran. But to use the word property, the problem with that is the way that society is right now. In a lot of ways, things are a lot worse than they've ever been in a lot of ways, right? But in some ways, I will say humanity has progressed. For example, like pedophilia, never been okay, but in some societies, it at different times. I mean, just look at Roman culture, like pederasty was a thing. Slavery, right? I mean, I've seen people try to, you know, whitewash it and try to, you know, but ultimately, majority of people agree that slavery is terrible and slavery is wrong. Where else? Polygamy. Most people believe polygamy is wrong. Beating your spouse or domestic violence. Most people believe. You see what I'm saying? In a lot of ways, I think the human morality of society has moved forward on some things. Could it be better? Yes. But I mean, let me know what you think. I think we've moved forward on some things and we need to move forward on a lot more. And I think Andrew Tate being canceled, I'm not saying I agree with him being canceled or whatever, but I see the danger in his speech based on the fact that he's trying to take us back. I guess it's like MAGA, Make America Great Again, like trying to take us back, but take us back to what? Where women are property and don't have a choice? Because that's kind of what it sounded like. That, and then the funny part is, it's like about his brother. He believes his brother's wife is his brother's property. And he would have to break that word down, but he knows what he's doing, and he selected that word property on purpose so he could go viral and then one day end up on Piers Morgan. You know what I'm saying?
And I believe the
Don't
father.
behave,
I am. The
don't behave
father
like-
hands her.
Don't behave like a politician.
The father hands her
When
to the
you-
man.
Right, but don't be a politician, because I think you're a straight talker,
Sure.
right? You keep telling me you're a straight talker. I think my sister is her husband's property. Do you regret saying it like that?
I understand that with my newfound fame, perhaps it could be phrased differently. However, I still believe that a woman is given to the man in marriage. That's what I believe.
Yeah, but not as
That's like an apology. So it kind of sounds like he could have said it different with his newfound fame because he wouldn't have been canceled. It's kind of like, I'm sorry I got caught. That's how I view that apology. What do you think? He's like, I could have framed it differently. To use the word property, he knew what he was doing. And he the scripture says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So either he has like a team that tells him to say these things. He has some handlers, hey, say this and it'll go viral, or this is what he really believes in his heart and mind.
property.
No, the property is the word that other people use when they ask me the question.
But as an equal partner in a loving union, that's what marriage actually means. It doesn't mean that when you get married, the woman is given to you as a bit of chattel.
Agreed.
So why say it?
But that's the way that people ask me the question. People say to me, they ask the
Oh,
question.
hang on. You can't blame people for asking you questions. Surely, if you want to be accountable for what you've said, you've got to own your responses, not blame the question.
I own the response.
Like me asking you a question now and you say something and then say, well, actually, I blame you for asking.
I understand, Piers. Piers, I understand. I believe the woman is given to the man. I believe she's given away by the father. I believe she belongs to the man.
So
if she belongs to the man.
Fundamentally, all right. So fundamentally, you do believe that a woman becomes a man's property.
I believe she belongs to the man.
I'm not a psychologist, but I also noticed, like, when he feels backed in the corner, did you say he was like he started talking very fast and like he changed his whole posture? You know what I mean? Like Piers is kind of getting under his skin right now and really highlighting the fact that he should use different terminology, and to use the word property is misogynistic. And that's why he is acknowledging, in my opinion, that he could have said it differently with his newfound fame. But I would argue, would Andrew Tate be famous if he wasn't a polarizing figure? If he didn't say these things, he got famous for saying these things, being rich, being wealthy, flaunting it, being an attractive male with, a nice body, making money. He looks the part of a male figure for beta males and other alpha males to want to be like and look up to. So he positioned himself in society to be that way. And that's what made him famous, at least from my perspective.
Man in marriage, correct.
Right. Oh, you see, that to me is misogyny.
And you're entitled to your opinion.
Right. But do you not understand why people think it is misogyny?
I understand why some people can be very offended by what I say. What they do is they take a point like that and they ignore all the other points I make the other way around.
Yeah, but that's why I've repeatedly asked you about that line to see if you've changed your position. But the reality is you haven't.
It's not about changing positions. I'm a full-grown adult and I stick by the things I say and I'm responsible for them.
Which, by the way, is fine.
Absolutely.
But what you did say at the start of this little exchange, you said, I wouldn't maybe say things the same way now that I did before I was famous. And yet, actually, you've doubled down and said exactly the same thing.
On certain points.
So that is what you believe. And that's my point.
Yes.
I'm trying to work out, look, I don't know you. We've just met, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to work out who Andrew Tate is and what you actually believe. I don't want to twist anything at all.
Then let me make it very, very clear to the camera. I believe a woman is given to the man in marriage. I believe that. I also believe a man has a duty to protect and provide for her. I believe a man should lay down his life if something happens or his wife's life is.
But those things, like he's like, I believe, a woman is the property of the man, but it's the man who has these other responsibilities too, as if that's what equals it out. But clearly it's not equal based on scripture, though. You see what I'm saying? Based on the responsibility of the man, to love himself and to love his wife as Christ loved the church, which is vastly different. Which, if Christ was going to do what he did, he had to have that much more of a relationship with the Father. He had to live, exist, and breathe for the Father. So the same way is the responsibility for the husband. And if he's going to bring the Bible into it, like, you got to, it's not equal. If the man is the head, it's not equal. If we really want to, talk about this, like, Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden when? Not when Eve ate. You see what I'm saying?
It's threatened. I believe that women and children first are on the lifeboats.
But men,
I believe that men.
but a man doesn't own a woman.
It's not. No. It's okay.
Unless they literally buy them as a slave.
Well, obviously, we're not talking about that. We're talking about religious, biblical marriage. We're talking about something else.
Yeah, but I'm a Christian. I don't believe.
Religious biblical marriage also has, it depends on what you're talking about. Because there was things in the Old Testament that were seemingly acceptable, and there's things in the New Testament. So to talk about biblical marriage, you have to identify what you're talking about. That's not a blanket or generalized statement that you can make.
That I own my wife.
Do you believe your wife was given away to you when she took your last name?
I believe that there is a process where a father traditionally walks his daughter down the aisle. And
this is where I also think that creation comes in. Like, I don't believe when I read in the Old Testament, Adam was given dominion by the Most High over the animals, the birds, all this stuff, right? Name the animals. But the only thing that Adam was not given dominion over was another human or Eve. You get what I'm saying? Eve made her own choices. Eve ate the apple. You see what I'm saying? Like, the Most High did not give Adam dominion over another man. And if you think about it, he never designed it to be that way with his people either. It was the Israelites who wanted the king to be like the other nations. But the Most High was like, I'm giving you the culture. Like, why do you want a king when you have the King of Kings? Right? Why do you need to be like the other cultures? I'm telling you how to live to where I'm pleased with you, and I will supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. So I believe that he's off base here. And I do believe saying that the idea of a father giving away his daughter, I think I can see how Andrew Tate is saying that, but this is one of the places where I think we have grown. But that would mean that the father has dominion over the daughter, which you don't have dominion over another human being. You get what I mean? Like, how can the father give away his daughter? Like, that's out of that's tradition. That's a sign of respect and all this stuff. But I don't think that goes into the line of property still. But I see how he equates this and makes it about property, and then tries to absolve the sting of the property by saying, oh, this is the responsibility for the man to protect the woman and all that. I think that doesn't even need to be said, does it? That's the norm. That's what you do for somebody you love, whether they're your wife or not. Humans do that for other humans, whether they're married to them or not. I find it very interesting. This is a very interesting chat.
And hands his daughter to this man, and they stand there and become a union of two loving people in a partnership. No, there's no ownership involved.
I didn't say
ownership. He's not selling her. The father of the bride isn't selling his daughter.
He didn't say ownership. He said property.
No, absolutely.
That's what property means.
She becomes a member of your family.
Is it?
I think we're arguing over semantics.
We're not, though, because fundamentally, I don't believe a man owns a woman. You do.
Well, I don't think a man owns any sovereign individual. I don't think we live in the world of slavery. I don't own any men or any woman.
Right.
Nobody owns
When
anybody.
you use phrases like property, that's what you imply.
I understand.
And so my point again is, you're a smart guy, right?
Correct,
There's no denying that. You're smart. You're a good talker. I've seen a lot of the stuff. But what I don't think you quite fully understand.
No, I understand very well.
When
Piers.
young, impressionable people
I understand
who are
very
not
well.
as smart see things like, I think my sister is her husband's property, yes, and you've just reaffirmed that belief. They think that they have the right.
Yes, the psychological development of someone who is coming up in the world, who is being told it's hard to be a man, being masculine and want to do manly things, is, you're going to be under attack. And then to add in there that you own a woman and your wife is your property, when that kind of power or absoluteness comes into the power of another human, what happens is behaviors that's not good. And wait till Andrew Tate says, unless he said it already, I'll just say it because I remember this part. He said that he was having this conversation with a Muslim person. And it's like, not to typecast all Muslims, but there are some Muslims who do believe in this way, and they do believe that they can beat their wives. There's some Christians who believe the same thing. There's Catholics. There's men who believe that the men who believe that women are their property, largely, I would say, I don't know, I could be wrong, but they are the type of men who would beat their wife or cheat on their wife or degrade their wife. That's what I think. What do you think?
Right to own women.
I understand that very well, Piers.
That's why people think you're a misogynist.
Completely. I understand all of this very well, which is why when you're saying I was backtracking, I'm not.
Do you have any regret, though, over the way you phrase this stuff?
Well, this is the point I was trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is when I was not nearly as famous and I was making long format content, I was not sitting there anticipating I'd become the most Googled man on the planet and that a few seconds could be taken out of context. That was not my anticipation.
No, but it's still what you believed. It's what you believe now. So what's the difference?
You're asking me, you're saying that young people who
I would like to know, how do you take someone out of context who says, I believe my brother's wife, I believe a father gives away his daughter to a man and then that woman becomes his property? How can you take that out of context? That's what I would love to know.
If you said to me, look, Piers, honestly, I've had time to think about this and I wish I hadn't said it. I don't believe that. That's one thing. Actually, you've said the opposite. You said, actually, that's what I think. Yeah.
I think that when
it doesn't really matter whether you recorded it when you're famous or not famous. It's what you actually believe, right?
I believe that a man has a duty to protect and provide for a woman. I believe
that's different, though. That's not property.
That a woman's father gives her away to the man. That's what I believe, and that's in my marriage.
So giving away to the man means that that's the property.
That's the circumstance I'm going to live under. If people want to live in a different scenario, that's completely theirs. Their prerogative.
You went on to say about authority over women. If I have a responsibility over her, I must have a degree of authority.
Yeah.
For the same reason, if I have responsibility over and people are going to use their mind, it's an example, an analogy. Responsibility over a child, I have to have some authority.
Yeah.
So you believe as part of your ownership or your property of the woman, you have authority over her.
No, I believe if you have
that's what you said.
I believe if you have responsibility over something, you have to have a degree of authority or you can't be responsible.
Yeah, but authority means, again, that you're the boss.
The point I'm making, if you'll please let me finish
Sure.
at this point. The point I was trying to make was talking about the safety of a woman. She was walking alone at night. And I was saying, well, I wouldn't let my woman walk alone at night. And they said, well, you're not in charge of her. You don't get to decide what she does. I said, I understand. But if I'm responsible for her safety and I'm the person who's burdened with making sure she is safe, I have to have the authority to say, don't put yourself in unsafe situations. The two things are linked.
Well, you don't have authority. You can absolutely have the right to say to the woman you're with, I don't think you should. But ultimately,
if she decides, then I can't force her.
Right. So authority implies that you have the ability to control someone.
No, authority implies that I have the moral right to sit and say that that's an irresponsible thing to do, and I'm responsible for
That's not what authority means.
Well, I'm not going to. If you think I'm going to lock somebody up in their room.
So, I think maybe the authority thing, it's only a problem because he believes the women are property. These are very things that I don't think you can take out of context. Property, authority, these are very generalized yet specific things at the same time, which makes it kind of hard to elaborate on, authority. Because I would argue he really means responsibility, not authority.
Room. Is that what you're implying?
No, I don't think you know what authority means.
I know what it means. I'm saying that if
I just a different description of what authority
means. If I have responsibility for her safety, then I have to have the authority to tell her not to do unsafe.
Yeah, but authority means that you have some form of control over this woman.
Here's the hit piece.
Here we go, baby.
They unearthed a Matt.
Yeah, like I don't. This authority thing again. Like I don't know. It's interesting.
I'm just doing God's.
I think you're trying to what you're trying to.
I'm
do.
only trying to get to what you think. Honestly, I am. I come with no agenda here at all.
I understand, and I'm explaining very, very clearly. If I have responsibility over said subject, I have to have authority over it. So let me say, you have children.
So he switched. Did y'all catch that? If I have responsibility, I have to have some authority over said subject. Now he's going to pivot to children because that's easier.
Right?
Right.
You have responsibility for them.
No, I have legal authority over my children. That is very different to having legal authority over my wife or my female partner.
Completely. But the point I'm trying to make.
So you accept that?
I accept that.
Because you used the analogy of responsibility for a child.
My friend, these are
actually really important things.
They're important things, but you interrupt me every 5 seconds, so it's hard for me to actually explain my point. The point I'm making here is very simple. You have children, and you're responsible for their safety. So you're going to have authority to say, "Don't go out at night," perhaps because you want them to be safe.
I have legal authority.
I wonder if Andrew Tate is a Mason. You know, just the way these celebrities be holding their hands and stuff. Yeah, do y'all notice that?
You have a legal authority.
Yeah.
Legal authority. I'm saying that if I had a woman, and the question where you've raised this soundbite from, I was asked about protecting a woman, making sure she's safe. And I would say I wouldn't want her to go out at night on her own because I'm responsible for her safety. And someone said, well, you don't have authority over her to do that. And I said, well, no, I can't force her to stay inside. But if she were to ask me, how do I protect myself at night? I would say, well, you should stay inside. That's how you should do it.
I don't have an issue with what
So
you
we
just
agree.
said. No.
It's the semantics.
No, it's not semantics. And this is where I don't
Once again, still different than authority.
think you quite get why there's a furore over what you say, with respect. Because the semantics point would be we're saying the same thing in different ways, but we're not. I'm saying to you that when you say I have to have some authority over a woman, I say to you, you have no right to any authority over a woman. You do over a child if it's your child, because you are the legal appointed guardian of that child.
Understood.
You're not a legally appointed guardian or authority over your wife or female partner.
Legally appointed, absolutely not. I agree. However, when it comes to things like personal responsibility or personal safety, men, largely by society, are accepted. We're the protectors and providers. We can sit here and pretend that in the world we live in, if me and my wife were walking down the street and men were to come up and try and attack us, I wouldn't be the one fighting. But we both know in reality I would.
Right.
I have a degree of responsibility.
What I feel like is missing from this conversation with Andrew Tate is the game has changed. Men are not really the providers anymore. In the Black community, you know, the prison industrial complex, privatized prisons, you know, Joe Biden recently, is he going to do all the way, you know, is he going to really make it happen for those who are incarcerated due to marijuana possession? You know, is he really going to decriminalize it? That would be great. But the efforts to emasculate men in this country started with slavery. You see what I'm saying? And if we're not going to right that wrong, if we're not going to fix those sins, then the emasculation of men is going to continue to happen. The emasculation of men is going on right now because both people need to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a man, generally speaking, unless you are very wealthy. How are you making a living to provide for your wife and your children? You get what I'm saying? These are the things that are, you know, are missing from the conversation of what masculinity is and what emasculation of men is, in my opinion. I think you would need to talk about those things, the ability for the man to provide and to protect. Because I remember when I was an Army recruiter, this is when I really knew that America was in trouble. It was about 2005. You know, I remember going to high school kids' houses to talk to them about joining the Army. And I remember it would be like 6, 7 o'clock and their parents were not home yet. And this was the regular occurring thing. And they had a nice house and all that. And I would tell them, hey, call your parents, let them know I'm here. Then, hey, call your parents and let them know I'm leaving and or I'm gone, whatever. And that's when I knew that something was wrong, because it's like, who's raising the children at this point? The school system is, the TV is, little Johnny's making sure little Debbie does her homework. So, and one might say, oh, they're high school age and that's okay. But my question is, do you think that only started during the high school age? I think that is the reality for many American families right now. That is the real issue. All these other things are just social things that I think are kind of made up, in my opinion, or less important.
Ability to protect her. So if I have a degree of responsibility to protect her physically, then the point I'm trying to make is I will do my best to make sure she's never putting herself in unsafe
Do you wish
situations.
you hadn't used the word authority?
The authority is something that she would give to me. She would come to me and say, how can I make sure I'm as safe as possible?
But I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to point out that's not what authority means.
If someone gives, a person can give
voluntary authority is not authority.
No, but that's the point. If
it's
a
not.
woman, Piers,
Andrew, stop.
Piers, if a woman comes to me and says, I want you to keep me safe, she is handing me authority for her safety.
But do you understand the difference between having authority over somebody and somebody giving you permission to have authority?
Completely. I never said
one is consensual and one isn't.
But why are we pretending I do unconsensual things?
Because you literally say, I must have a degree of authority. I have to have some authority. And the point
only if I'm responsible for her safety. If I'm not responsible for her safety, I don't have authority.
If your position now is that with her permission, I would like to have authority when we go out at night to protect her, that's a different
That was
thing.
always my position.
But that's not what you said.
But that was always my position.
So again, I simply say to you,
It is what I said. Though.
Do you wish you'd phrased it a different way?
No, because we're talking about long format copy where I'm talking about a woman who has come to me and said, you're responsible for making sure I'm safe. I said, well, then I have to make the decisions.
When an 18-year-old boy reads, I must have some authority over a woman, what do you think he thinks?
Well, I understand that. And I said this earlier when you tried to say I was backtracking, which I'm not doing.
No, actually, I'm not. I don't want to.
Okay.
I'm not trying to gotcha you.
Cool.
I'm trying to work out exactly what you.
I understand with massive fame comes massive responsibility. I understand that a percentage of the population are always going to take everything that's said by anybody out of context.
Would you change the wording of what you said?
No, I would just encourage people to watch my long format copy and understand it
Would
fully.
you tell an 18-year-old boy you don't have authority over women?
Absolutely.
You would say that?
Unless a woman comes to him and says, you're responsible for my safety, please make sure keep me safe. Like
I
my
see.
woman
Now
says,
that Andrew Tate, I can sign up to.
Well, then we agree.
Yeah, but I don't agree with what you said before.
Because you're taking a soundbite from a 2-hour
Yeah, but
conversation.
you haven't been taken out of context because I read you the entire sentence. It's very.
But you've ignored all the context around the sentence, my friend.
You can't ignore a sentence that says, I must have a degree of authority.
But you can when there's a 2-hour conversation where a woman is telling me if she makes me responsible for her safety and me explaining, well, if I'm responsible for your safety, I have the authority to make decisions. So yes, you've ignored all the context.
Do you respect women?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?
Do you think that 18, 19-year-old women are more attractive than 25-year-old women?
I think there's attractive people. That's a loaded question. I don't know.
Well, it's not really, is it?
I can't.
You know why I'm asking it?
Of course I do, but I can't sit here and
say. For the benefit of viewers who don't know why I'm asking, you said this. In general, this is also one of the reasons men find youth attractive. You want to blow up the internet? I'll blow up the internet right effing now. The reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. People say, oh, you can't say that, but yes, I can. A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman, and I'll tell you why. Because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up. That is misogyny.
Why?
Because you are encouraging a mindset about 25-year-old women that makes them sound out to be infinitely less desirable than 18.
There's a lot of generalized statements here. You know what I mean? Like, in some ways, I can see why he got canceled. In other ways, I'm like, why would anybody really pay attention to what this dude says? On one hand, he invokes the Bible. And then on another hand, like, how is what he's saying not misogynistic when, you know, he's all about men and masculinity, but it's not the same standard for men, right? And then the assumption that women who are over 25 are promiscuous and all this stuff. Like, man, I don't understand why anybody listens to this guy after the crazy things he said. Maybe they did him a favor in canceling him. I don't know.
18, 19-year-olds and having effectively been having too much sex to be taken in a more respectful way.
Well, firstly, even if that was the case, that wouldn't be misogyny.
But what did you mean by what you said?
That's not misogyny because it's not anti-women. I'm saying that an 18 or a 19-year-old woman would be more desirable.
Pretty anti-25-year-old woman.
Anti-25-year-old women we can argue, but not misogyny.
Well, that's misogyny.
No, it's not.
Well, being anti any woman at all is misogyny.
Not when I'm saying that women are beautiful and attractive at a certain age and saying the age.
You're saying 18, 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25.
Well, than ageist perhaps, but misogynistic absolutely.
Is that
not.
but you just accepted it was misogyny?
No, I didn't. You said it was misogyny. I'm telling you, no, it's not.
So you don't think if you're saying slightly hateful things about a 25-year-old...
That's not slightly hateful.
Well, it is. You think you say that to a woman's face if she's 25?
It's not slightly hateful.
So you would go up to a 25-year-old woman and tell her exactly what I just read out.
Why would I walk up to a random 25-year-old woman?
Because you said it in public on the internet, and it's been listened to and watched by millions.
It's almost like a clash of the culture where he realizes that, I think in this interview, based on that face right there, that's a good pause right there. Based on that face right there, I think it's like coming to the reckoning that the things that he says are ultimately ridiculous and that he is playing a character, y'all. He's an actor. He's an actor. He's playing a character. And so it's maybe that's the reason why he's like, of course, I would never do these things in public. You know, I just say these things because I'm acting a part. I'm acting a role. He's an online persona. But it blew up and people took him serious and he became one of the most Googled people, more than President Trump and Kim Kardashian. Now he's realizing it and it's like, why do y'all take me that serious?
And millions of young impressionable boys.
Correct. There was a large panel. There was a conversation. There was hours long of conversation. There were feminists attacking men for toxic masculinity and attacking me and saying things. And I said things back, which were going to antagonize
But I think,
which you've done yourself a bunch of times.
I think a lot of allegations of toxic masculinity are not toxic.
Correct.
I do think that kind of sentence that I just read out, that paragraph, is actually toxic. If you genuinely mean that, and you say you wouldn't say it to a woman's face, but you said it in public about women of that age, I do think that's misogynist. And I think you probably do too.
I don't think it's misogynistic. I understand why it can be insulting.
You wouldn't say it to a woman's face?
Well, it depends. You're making out like I'm walking around the street going up to random 25-year-olds.
Well, effectively, you're doing it to tens of millions of people online. There's no difference.
Not at all. We're discussing a topic. We were discussing the ideal age of a man.
Should young boys, right, in their teens, are you comfortable that they would have that mindset? Be honest.
I think that young boys in their teens lack life experience. They lack nuance. And they need to be very, very careful what they're digesting online, whether it's my content or anybody else's.
Yeah,
I think
that's the admission. Hey, I'm playing a role. I'm an actor. Don't listen to me because I say crazy and wild things, and don't listen to anyone without, you know. And it's weird though, because that's the crazy part is that's who his material. That's, you know, the people that sign up for his internet program and all this stuff, like they're impressionable young men. So in a way, just like in California, I think they just ruled that rap lyrics can't be used against rappers, but rappers are from Young Thug and all these people are rapping their crimes and rapping the murders and all that stuff. Like, why would that not be allowed to be used against you in a court of law when you're rapping about the actual crime that you committed? The funny thing is that was a Key and Peele skit as well.
Know for a fact millions of them are digesting exactly what you're saying.
Completely. The entire internet, to a degree. I think any subject you can find, there's going to be a whole heap of
I come back to the Joe Rogan thing, Andrew. Is that a lot of what you say I agree with.
Yeah.
Right? I do, genuinely. I've read a lot of stuff you said. A lot of the stuff you talk about, I think, yeah, he's got a good point, right? So we agree about a lot of things. But when I read that kind of thing, I'm like, how much of that is you? How much of that is some act? Do you regret saying stuff like this?
I don't.
And actually, do you see it as weakness to admit you shouldn't have said something like that?
No, I don't live with regret. I think what's happened is that, like I said, long format content, arguments with feminists, arguments with the toxic masculine crowd, arguments with the left, and they're going to take a small clip, small sentence from ours, and they're going to try and paint me as a
But
villain.
I'm not left or right.
I don't know what you are, Piers.
Exactly. That's my point. No, but that's my point.
And I understand. And you're doing exactly as I knew would happen on this interview, which is because you're a busy man. You're not going to watch hours and hours and hours of video.
Actually, I have watched hours and hours of video, and I'm going to come to the stuff where I agree with you, and I'm going to come to the stuff about your censorship, which
Sure.
I have issues with. So this is, it's a long interview, right?
Sure.
I just thought off the top, you said to me, and you were quite bold about it. Well, go on, then let's go through these.
And you should keep going. I will sit here and stand by what I said. I believe that
on
man.
that, I just read to you then.
Yeah.
Do you wish you hadn't said that?
Can an 8,000-year-old herb really increase your T, lower your body fat,
If
and
he could
maximize
answer
your
honestly, I think he
clinical
would.
trials say
I think he would say yes.
in our inbox for Unzu's?
But I do ultimately think it would show weakness if he apologized. That would not, like, the people that cheer Andrew Tate on, like, the reason why I'm doing this video is because he is a polarizing figure, popular figure, one of the most, research people. He used the Bible in here, tried to, call women property. And I think it's important to have a conversation about things that are going on in the world, because maybe Andrew Tate's not popular to you or to me, but he is obviously to millions of people.
I understand how it's been misconstrued. I understand how it's been weaponized against me. Do I regret it because it's been weaponized and used against me? Well, that's slightly annoying.
That's not.
It's easy for celebrities, when accountability comes, or anybody in a authoritative kind of role, like he speaks from like an authoritative place, being confident, and he's the poster boy. It's easy for those people, for rappers, for anybody who's in the public eye, to flee accountability and act like things have been weaponized. Like they act like accountability is a weapon being used against them, when it's like, no, we just expect you to say what you mean and mean what you say, especially when that's your whole MO.
Not why I want you to
Did I
regret
at the time mean what I said in the context of the conversation,
Hmm.
which obviously you're not familiar with and the people at home are not familiar with? No, I meant what I said.
The 25-year-old women, they've just talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up.
Well, there's a whole bunch of context and conversation around that's been missed, and I
I don't
encourage
think I'm
people-
missing much context.
Well,
It's pretty-
I encourage people who are interested to go watch it.
Right, but I mean, I've just read out 3 sentences on the bounce there. I don't think there's any context I'm missing. I mean, you made it pretty clear what you think about the difference between 18 and 90-year-old women.
I wasn't
and
talking about
26-year-olds.
myself, even. I was talking with a Muslim guy who was on the panel, and he was explaining how youth is very valued in most
That makes it a little bit worse if you ask me.
parts of the world, and why virginity is valued in most parts of the world. The feminists were arguing against it, and I was sitting there, actually very much like you, a mediator between the two, explaining why in most of the world still today, perhaps not in the Western world, virginity is coveted, youth is coveted in most of the world, and throughout all of human history. And I was sitting there making the point, explaining why in certain parts of the world they think how they do,
Well, in large parts of the world,
even though it's very different to the Western world. So I was making a point, mediating between two groups.
I like how I got real loud right there. I think in places where the idea is property and ownership, and in religious spaces where the idea is property and ownership, or the woman is less than, the idea of virginity and it's higher. This is just my opinion. I don't think it has anything to do with necessarily conservative values and all that, because guess what? Virginity doesn't matter for the man in these places. There's more emphasis on the woman being a virgin in these places. So I don't think you can tie that to conservative or religious values, because then why is it not the same? Because if we're talking about Christianity, we just read in there in Ephesians, right, that the submission, the greater submission is for the man than the woman. And so are you going to tell me that the Bible emasculates men? Hell no, you're not going to tell me that. The idea is that the man submits to his wife. The man submits in the way that Christ loved the church. That's the idea. That's the scripture that obviously Andrew Tate hasn't read.
Groups very similar to yourself. The conversation has been misunderstood. They've taken this clip of it and it's been weaponized and used against me. I understand that is because I'm now the most famous Google person on the planet. It's inconvenient, sure. But I'm definitely not a danger to women in any regard. I date women 25, 26, 27 years old all the time. None of them are offended by the things
I don't think
say.
you're a danger to women.
Of
I
course
think
not.
I think the danger, if it concerns you, the danger is
The danger is the rhetoric and what that rhetoric can produce in other humans who look up to Andrew Tate.
influence you have on young men to have this kind of mindset about women. And that's really where I'm trying to get to what you really believe and how much you've just shot off because you think it's like entertaining and you haven't really given it much thought. And whether now you're a bit older and you've had all the fallout, whether part of you is thinking, actually, if I had, as Joe Rogan says, if you hadn't said stuff like this, you'd probably still be on all these platforms. You'd be massively more popular, massively more famous, massively richer. So I'm really just trying to get to, on the blatantly misogynist stuff, do you just wish you hadn't said it?
With great power comes great responsibility. It was certainly said before the great power came. It's inconvenient to a degree. However, like I said at the time, with the context of the conversation, I know that I'm not saying things which I believe to be detrimental to the world. However,
so that is the extent of the apology that he will give, that he's probably rehearsed to be able to give. And that's as far as it's going to go.
They've been misconstrued and they've been misunderstood.
If a 25-year-old woman was watching this, would you say, I'm sorry for saying that?
Well, I wouldn't want anyone to be offended by anything I say, but I say things. But I say things that offend, and this is the thing that's interesting, Piers. Please let me finish.
I mean, you're behaving like a politician. But hang on, you could say I'm interrupting.
You do,
but you're answering a different question to the one I asked you. So, as an interviewer, you're
sure. Okay,
you're
sure,
behaving.
Sure. Okay, let's sure.
Okay, you accept that. Let's accept we both got on. Okay. So again, my point is simply, if a 26-year-old woman is watching this and has heard those comments, would you just say to her, "Look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that"?
No, I won't. I will say that I am sorry that offends you. However, there's a large contingent of the world.
That doesn't mean you're sorry.
No, I'm not sorry. That's the point I'm making. I'm sorry if that offends you. However, there's a large contingent of the world that believe that, and I was mediating for a conversation.
Parts of the world that believe that about 26-year-old women are parts of the world where women are not allowed out on their own.
That's
the point I made earlier, places where they view women as property. And like I said, that's as far as he can go for the fan base that he still has. That's the farthest apology that he can give and still maintain his power base and his power structure.
That's a conversation.
They have to wear full burqas.
Well, that's a conversation.
They're not allowed to drive cars.
That's nothing to do with me.
But is that the kind of world for women that you?
I was mediating a conversation.
No, I'm asking you what you think.
I don't live in a country where that happens.
So you're using that as the excuse for why you're not sorry for saying it.
It's not an excuse.
Is that there are parts of the world where this is fine?
My friend.
So my question to you is, well, do you think it's fine?
I don't think it's fine. I live in a world where
you don't think it's fine.
The reason
this isn't that hard, Andrew. You can simply say, Piers, you know what? With the benefit of hindsight, I wish I hadn't said it like that. And if a 26-year-old woman's watching, I'm sorry I said that, because that actually is blatantly misogynist. And even though that's a view held by other parts of the world, it's not a view I share. Now, I would respect you more if you said that than if you try and say, well, it's said in other parts of the world, so I'm not sorry.
I think
that doesn't tell me what you think.
Then you need to understand why my content existed in the first place. My content existed because I tried my very hardest to be an absolute and utter realist, especially with uncomfortable truths. I was pointing out that very uncomfortable.
Is that a truth?
It's an uncomfortable truth in many parts of the world. It's not a truth that I'm happy about. It's not a truth I created.
Hang on. You're doing it again. What do you mean that's a truth in other parts of the world? That's what you said. It's not. You're not talking about another part of the world. You're talking about what you believe is the difference between 18 and 90-year-olds and 26-year-olds.
I was talking about
your belief.
I was talking about what the people on the panel believe the difference is.
So what do you think the difference is?
I think the difference is age.
What's the difference then?
Well, then a 26-year-old's older than a 19-year-old.
And so you stand by what you said about talking to the guys, being to the club more times, being effed and dumped more times. Well, you believe that or not?
No, there's plenty of 26-year-old women who have been with one man or virgins, of course.
So you don't believe that?
I don't think that the age is the only thing that's going to decipher how many men and women.
So if you don't actually believe what you said, just say sorry.
It's not about not believing what I'm saying. It's about you understanding that there's large conversations going on.
I'm just reading back stuff you've said.
I know
I'm asking you, do you believe it?
I believe that it's more likely a 26-year-old's had more partners than a 19-year-old.
Right. You don't know that.
I don't know.
This is interesting, right? This is what happens, I think, when, you be loose with the tongue. And I really feel like spiritually, it would be better if he just apologized. That would be the more masculine thing for him to do, is apologize. But he can't, because in his following, that him apologizing would, as a man, emasculate him. But spiritually, I feel like, minus the arguing and going back and forth piece, this is what happens when, you know, spiritually, like somebody doesn't want to repent, or they're trying to justify their actions rather than just apologizing, rather than just repenting and going their own way. It's kind of like he's making it harder, and it's kind of hard to watch, right? Luckily, Piers Morgan is just going on, but like, where would the interview go? It would just be like done. At the end, it's just probably just gonna be like done. And I've seen numerous videos. I didn't click on them, but I see a lot of videos that are saying that, you know, Andrew Tate won. And so that's kind of why my the title of this video is the way that it is, because people are looking at this from a win or lose type of perspective.
No, that you're right.
In fact, there could be absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever.
Completely agree.
So why say it? Why stigmatize all 26-year-old women?
It's not about, we're repeating ourselves here.
Well, not really. I'm just trying to get to what you actually believe.
I believe that men find youth attractive in general. I believe that in the context of the conversation,
25-year-old women aren't old.
I agree with you. They're not, especially I'm old. I'm a lot.
And I think it's important to note, Andrew Tate has a net wealth larger than mine. He's very wealthy. So, and remember, it just came out, Leonardo DiCaprio, basically when his girlfriends turn 25 or something like that, he dumps them every time. So maybe there's a particular type of man that Andrew Tate is talking to, but he creates these statements that are so general that like he's speaking for all masculine men, which is dangerous to me. And also I think it's a very elementary idea of masculinity, if you ask me, which is probably why, you know, he makes the case with his own words on why he would be called the king of toxic masculinity.
A lot older than that. The point I was making was part of mediating a panel, a conversation between feminists and some Muslim guys.
I get it.
Okay,
I get it.
good.
But
So you understand why I said the sentence.
But as far as I know, you weren't espousing what a Muslim man might think. You were espousing what you think.
I was espousing what the people on the panel believed.
But you were saying what you think.
I feel like you're trying to pin me down.
If it's not what you believe, just say, I don't believe that.
What part wouldn't I believe?
Well, you tell me which part you don't believe. There's the sentence. Which part would you now say you don't believe?
I believe that 25-year-old women perhaps have had, because they've been alive longer, maybe have had more partners, but I don't believe that makes them a bad person.
Right. But you understand that the way you phrased it makes every 25-year-old woman feel a bad person.
No, I don't think so.
Of course you do. You're not stupid, Dad. Come on.
Piers.
Andrew, you're not.
I guarantee you, because I think I've heard like somebody make a comment about it, but I'm going to look it up. Like how, I'm sure this is true, but I don't want to be like saying this. I'm going to look it up after I press play again. But I'm sure he brags about the type of women that he gets with, and his idea is not the same for women that it is for men, which sort of kind of leans towards misogynistic ideas, because he's talking about virginity with women, but a man can sleep with however many women he wants, and that's masculine, and that's what men do, and he probably makes excuses for it, kind of the same way Kevin Samuels was, you know, rest in peace. Kevin Samuels was talking about a high value man cheats and all this stuff, and like, it's like, come on, man, like you are talking about a specific type of man, or like it's not even in general. You can't take what one or two people believe in or what one or two men have done and say like this is all men and this is what masculinity is. And at the same time, Kevin Samuels had a niche. Andrew Tate has a niche. It's a hustle.
Stupid. You know what that sounds like to any 25, 26-year-old woman.
Completely. And
right? So you have maligned every 25, 26-year-old woman with that statement. And I'm simply asking you, to all those who are not of the type of women that you've described it, are you sorry?
I don't want anybody to be offended by anything I say. I want to be a positive force in the world. I don't want anybody to hear what I say and make them feel bad about themselves. I want all people to live righteous and good, whether they're male or female. And anybody
Do
who's
you lead a righteous life?
I think I do, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
You boasted openly of having 6, 7 partners at once. So is that righteous? I'm not taking there's no moral view from me. Simply asking you what you think righteous means.
I think righteous is living true to your heart and knowing that you're doing good by people, not snaking anybody, not lying to anybody. I know I live a very righteous life.
Have you ever been in love?
Yeah.
How many times?
Plenty. I believe in love between men and
There it goes.
women.
A real love, you know, where it's,
I believe.
how many times would you say?
Enough.
See 6 or 7 women at one time, but if a woman is doing that, he would have an issue.
I believe men and women are a beautiful union. I think we're slightly different, but when we work together, we're the most powerful force in the world.
How many women have you loved?
I don't know, Piers. A few.
Give me a ballpark. 5, 10, 20?
Let's say.
You don't forget how many people you've been in love with.
Let's say 10.
He also doesn't want to admit this too, because this takes away from his act of masculinity. You know, the idea of a simp, or I don't know what they call it nowadays, but that was old terminology for a guy who just like grovels over a woman or is like so in love with a woman.
I mean, I've been in love, and I certainly believe that men and women, when they work together, it's the most beautiful force on the planet. I believe in family. I believe in children. I believe in.
If you believe in family and children and love, why are you single?
I'm not single.
Well, you're not married. Something.
Well, if I was married, the last thing I would do is advertise it to the feral psychopaths on the internet. So
I'm not a feral psychopath.
Well,
you called me friend earlier.
Can be debated, Piers. But the point the point I'm making as a whole is that all of these.
Do you want to get married? Is my point.
No, but let's please for a second.
You don't, or you do?
Let's please for a second, because you've interrupted me so many times. I've failed to.
Well, I've only interrupted you, just to be clear, when you've actually answered a different question.
Cool. Well, then on all these points you're making,
you've admitted that.
On all these points you're making on repeat, you're taking these sentences and on repeat you're you're weaponizing them against me.
I'm not weaponizing anything.
Okay, it's fine.
No. You're weaponizing the weaponizing, which doesn't exist.
No problem.
But you said to me, come on, bring it on, read out.
You're weaponizing the weaponizing.
All the things that you think are blatant misogyny. All I've done is literally read out all the things we identified from all the research that I thought were blatantly misogynist. And giving you the chance to respond. And the only time I've interrupted you is when you've tried to answer a completely different question.
Understood, Piers. But these things were said in large context, where often I'm talking about how, for example, on the same podcast where you've read one of them sentences from, I was talking about how it's a man's duty to die by a woman. And the guy asked me, he said, if 10 men with knives attacked your woman, wouldn't you just... I said, yeah, I'd stand and die. I'd never just run away, because I have a duty as a man. I must die on the spot to protect her honor and my honor. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about a man having responsibility to his duties. I'm talking about the old traditional ways of masculinity. And what happens is a few sentences from such a long conversation is taken and used against me.
I understand that.
So I want
I told y'all he was talking about the old ideas, but if we want the old ideas, that doesn't really work now, because society is different. Both, I mean, the man and the woman have to work. You know, if you're going to afford things, look at the cost of living right now. Look at the cost of housing right now. You know, both parents work, and in places rent's not affordable, and we're not doing anything about these economic issues that impact families. If we want the traditional way, we have to advocate for the traditional way. It's not that women are property. It's not these other ideologies. This is my opinion. It's not other ideologies that are emasculating men. It's the societal problems. Men not being in position to provide for their family. Why is that? They're not getting paid enough. You know, like these are the ways that emasculation really happens. It doesn't have anything to do with Westbrook. I don't even follow sports like that, but a dude in a dress. It don't have anything. Emasculation of men doesn't have anything to do with that. It has everything to do for me, because I think that those things are not necessarily masculine, not necessarily feminine. What I think masculine is the values and the belief system and the conduct. Less about how you actually look, more about how you actually carry yourself.
you to understand that I'm talking about protecting and providing for women. I'm talking about a man
Do
making
you
sure
want
a
to get
woman-
married?
No, but this is we have to. We has all feed into each other, Piers. I'm talking about
It's
protecting.
not a hard question.
No, but I'm talking about protecting and providing for a woman. I'm talking about a man being responsible for her safety.
I understand.
So of course I believe in men and women. Of course I believe in love. Of course I believe in marriage. Of course I believe in family.
No, but none
the
of that was
idea
my
that I
question.
don't believe in
Andrew,
the idea that I don't believe in these things
I
is
didn't
crazy.
ask you if you believed in it. I asked you if you're going to get married.
One day, absolutely.
You'd like to.
If I'm not married already, I will be married one day. If I'm not,
Well, you might be secretly married.
I could be married, correct.
Why would you not tell me either way?
Why would I advertise to the feral psychopaths of the world who have tried their very best to destroy me for an opinion about my private life and the things that are most sacred to me? Why
What do you
would I
think
do
if
that?
you said you were married, everyone would hate you?
I don't know about people hate me. It's about me understanding that I'm a hard target, but I am very, very protective of the people I care about.
Right. But you believe in the concept of marriage.
Completely. That's what we were talking about the whole time.
What do you think?
We talked about a man giving a woman away.
Okay.
I believe in marriage more than anybody. In
Here's
fact,
my-
I believe in marriage in, no, please. I
Okay.
believe in marriage in the traditional sense. I believe a man has a duty to stand up and be a real man. I believe that the problem with the world today that we are facing is that not enough men are.
Do you think a man stepping up and being a real man, does he need to think that his wife or his partner is his property in order to do that? I hope Pierce, if I was Pierce, I would ask him that question. That's a good question, right? Let me know what you think.
Are sticking to the age-old ways of masculinity.
Mhm.
I believe that me standing up and saying a man must protect a woman and provide for her, so he needs to make sure that she's safe. He needs a degree of authority to
I have
protect
no
her.
problem with.
But people do have a problem with it,
I'm
that's
not sorry.
that's the world we're in now.
Andrew, I'm over here.
Sure.
I don't have a problem with what you just said. Here's where my problem comes, right? There are a lot of clips of you floating around on the internet, as you know. One of them has you saying, bang out the machete, boom in her face, grip her by the neck, shut up, bitch. In another, you say, slap, slap, grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex. When people see those clips and
They
hear you say
misunderstand
those
them.
things,
Agreed.
well, I don't think that.
The room divider.
How can you misunderstand that? Like,
It's not hard to misunderstand it.
It is.
You might say that it's consensual. Other people would say, whether it's consensual or not, that's a very ugly way to talk about women.
Completely. Now let's
Hitting
watch.
them with machetes.
No, watch the whole video. It's a girl coming at me.
and this, at this point, it makes me think about, rap music and all of the forms of entertainment that are acceptable, which carry like these same kind of connotations. And I think maybe, there's not a difference in those forms of entertainment and this form of entertainment. And I do believe that Andrew Tate is an actor and he's playing his role.
Me with a machete and me saying, here, slap the machete out of her hand.
I
She's
understand.
attacking me.
I
So you don't
understand.
understand. This is the exact point.
I do
The
understand.
No, people don't watch them in full. And this is actually what's interesting. And please don't interrupt me on this point. Social media has changed in modern times. YouTube 5 years ago was 5, 6, 7, 8 minute long videos. Now we have TikTok, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, YouTube shorts, Instagram stories. Now anything you produce that's long form is cut down to very, very short form. They're interested in clicks, they're interested in engagement.
Of course.
They find
But
the
you
most
benefited from all
they
that.
find the most controversial clips they can.
And Andrew,
Exactly what Andrew Tate has done, which has got him to the point where he is now. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is what allowed him to be successful. So now that you're at the top, now you're blaming technology instead of just changing your ways. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think.
purpose.
you benefited from all that.
Everybody benefits from social media views, as do you.
Was it the Hustler? What is it
I had
called?
an online school
Called
Hustlers University.
Right. And their whole job was to promote your clips, make you rich and famous. So you've benefited from this system, the one you now profess to hate. You've benefited from
I
all
never
that.
said I hated
You've
it.
clickbaited like the best of them.
I never said I hated it. I'm saying what happened. I don't hate it. I don't hate social media. I think it's a very powerful force. I don't hate the social media. I'm saying
The point is, I think you can talk. Look, you can talk to girlfriends of yours, maybe a secret wife. I don't know. It's entirely up
or
to you.
two.
Or two. Maybe you've got 10 wives. That's your business. I don't care. Right. My only thing is, I don't care what you do in private. If it's consensual between you and another woman, you can do what you like. Right. It's your life. I believe in freedom and liberty. It's when you say it in public, it's the influence that this kind of thing has on young men.
Agree.
Right? And I speak to someone with 3 sons, right? It's who are, by the way, they're intrigued by you. They're fascinated, right? You're a big thing in that world of TikTok and so on. So they all are aware of you and what you say. So they're all looking. And when they see things like the machete thing, I get the context because I'm a 57-year-old guy who's been around the block a bit, and I can get what you've said, and you responding to a particular scenario which you'd created where a woman...
But it can be misunderstood.
I understand. So my point to you is, given that you know it can be misunderstood, do you regret saying things like this on camera where it can be disseminated by less intelligent young males who think that is actually what they should be doing to women?
And finally, we get to the point of the issue, which is the point I tried to make at the very beginning. When I made a video before I was famous that got 500 views, me being concerned that 1% of people will misunderstand it was not relevant. Where you start getting 5 million views a video, 50 million views a video, 1% of people misunderstanding
Doesn't change what
becomes no, it doesn't. But it becomes a much larger problem.
I understand.
So with great fame
That's true.
comes great responsibility.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
oh,
I agree.
would I now that I'm
Michael,
famous?
yes.
Do I say things the same way as I did back before I was famous? Absolutely not.
Right.
As neither would you or nearly any other famous person on the planet.
So my
Once you
logical-
become famous, you have to be a lot more careful with
I
how you say
understand.
things.
I understand. So my logical follow-up to that remains, do you regret then saying it the way you said it?
I can't live in regret by saying something before I was famous on a camera, which barely anybody watched, and then I became famous afterwards. That would be a very asinine way to view the world.
So
I can't live in.
So you stand by all those things?
I can't live in regret because I didn't know I was going to become the most famous man on the planet.
I agree with that. You don't have to live in regret. But I think the major thing is he still believes this way. Now, he still believes that women are property and the father gives the daughter away to the woman. And so, which is all good in a way, because if his marriage is like that, and that's what, his marriage is about, then it's all good. But when you put this out and these are the clips that people hear about you, then, you bear some of the responsibility, I think, for people going and doing certain things, just like rap music. I'm not saying ban all rap music, but I do think lyrics should be able to be used in cases of rappers. Like if you rapping that you just murdered somebody, then you just rapped about your crime and bragged about it, and you just told police officers in the world what you did. It should be used against you in a court of law.
Planet. That regret would be the wrong word. Is it inconvenient? Sure. But I can't sit here and say, I wish I knew 6 years ago I'd be the most famous man on the planet and monitored all of my speech forever. That's asinine.
You see, but one of the problems that people have with...
Yeah, I get that, because you can't do nothing about the past, but you can do something about the future. And that's what we're talking about here. But by focusing on the past, it allows him to absolve himself of the responsibility of how he believes now. And it's almost like kind of showing that he's not going to change because he has to keep this act up because he has his followers. That's what I'm getting from this. Let me know what you think in the comments.
Is that they think you have a malevolent influence on young people. This was the excuse that was put out by the big tech companies.
Excuse being the key word.
Well, it may be, actually. I intrinsically, I have a problem with censorship. I don't think Donald Trump should be banned from Twitter, for example, because the Ayatollah of Iran remains on Twitter and other social media platforms.
Good point.
And whatever I think of you, you're not the Ayatollah of Iran, right? So to me, there's got to be perspective here. And I don't understand the inconsistency by what companies like Twitter, how they treat the leader of Iran and someone like you. It seems to me they're much more draconian on people like you than they are with people who perhaps should not be allowed platforms. But generally, I don't really agree with no platforming people. But I think what's interesting talking to you is it seems to me like you have gone on a bit of a journey of self-awareness about the impact of some of the stuff you said in the past. And you have said you wouldn't say it again in the same way. Now, you may not want to express regret for that, but it shows me that at the very least, you have evolved to somebody who recognizes
That's a good point.
that these can be quite damaging in the way that you said them.
Completely. As a professional and as an adult, it would be stupid for me to sit here and say that now that I'm the most famous man on the planet, my words do not have more impact than they did before. With impact, with power comes responsibility. and things need to be worded in a very careful way. Now, when I do a long format interview, I have to sit there and consciously understand that any 10 seconds of that can be cut and used against me. So I have to be a lot more careful with how I say my words and how I can.
And I think the easier way is just work on your character. If somebody wants to, this is the time that we're living in. Oh man, I just watched this show called The Capture, and it was about deep fake technology and how they could do it real time and have anybody, any politician saying anything. It was very, 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 very interesting. So there's that. But I think that it's just about working on your character, and if you've gotten famous, he's in a tough spot now, because if you've gotten famous for saying crazy things, then you're going to fall off if you change your ways, which is why I think he can't regret why he's here. We've been hearing a lot of celebrities apologize for different things. I would say Creflo Dollar, the pastor, is a celebrity who sort of apologized for tithing, but then didn't apologize. But then he was like, but he wouldn't be where he is now if he didn't believe in taking all y'all people's money. So I just think it's very interesting, and I think that's the struggle that he's in right now. It's like, will he apologize? Because if he does, he said he would say it different, but it was like a soft apology. Because if he really did apologize, he would lose his fan base. That would not be masculine of him. He has to keep this persona up that he set for himself. And it's kind of like, now you made your bed, now you got to lay in it. But I mean, he's not going to be hurting anytime soon. He's got money. He's got influence still. It probably just drove a lot of people to his website. Let me know what you think.
Struck my sentences. Of course, we agree with all of that. That's exactly what's happened to me. I agree with all of that. I don't want to be seen as a negative influence in the world. I know that there's a whole bunch of men. I get thousands of emails a week from men whose lives I've saved. I get thousands of emails a week from men who are on the verge of suicide and I've saved their lives. We're talking about.
And by the way, I don't dispute that at all. You have almost certainly, I would think, from everything I've read about you, I think you have certainly been probably able to be very helpful to young men who have really struggled for self-confidence and all that kind of thing, right? I'm completely prepared to accept that. But there was also, I think, quite a disturbing piece that BuzzFeed did. And it talked about the negative impact of young, impressionable male minds when they've read or seen some of the more inflammatory things you've said. And they quoted, for example, Sandy, 22, from Washington. My father's gone from a man who minored in women's studies in college, who was kind and in touch with his emotions, treated all people, men and women around him, with kindness, to a man who says that whenever he sees an effeminate male stranger, he gets an overwhelming urge to murder them. He loves podcasts. He listens to a lot of podcasts. I know he's listened to Andrew Tate.
Whoa. Let's stop for a second. Let's be professional here, Piers, because you're a professional, as am I. First, she said, did you say that my father went? She said, my father has gone.
Her father.
That's a full-grown man, firstly. So we're talking about my impact on children. You just talked about a full-grown man here. Secondly, I've never talked about murdering effeminate men in anything online ever, in any context ever. So I don't know why they have taken some random person I've never met in the world who's full-grown, an adult, and come to their own conclusions who I've never met and lumped his name in with mine. That is absolutely unfair on every level. I didn't read this BuzzFeed. I didn't read this BuzzFeed article, but after hearing the first point, I know it's trash. That is complete garbage.
What is
to say that I'm the reason this man believes what he believes.
I've seen a quote from you, and you can tell me what you feel.
I also noticed, from a psychological behavioral kind of standpoint, after, we're over halfway through the interview, and it's interesting that when Andrew Tate feels like he's losing composure or losing power, like, have you noticed how he shifts his body and talks to the camera? Even one point, Piers Morgan was like, I'm over here, Andrew. And that's a method to where he can establish his dominance again. And to me, it's a signal that he's uncomfortable and he's losing, sort of losing control of his emotions and sort of getting angry on how the interview is going. What do you think about that? But I do think I ain't cool. I don't know about this BuzzFeed thing, but that doesn't sound cool at all. Yeah, that don't sound cool at all.
About this.
Sure.
You talk about people don't want to see men dressed up in dressing. I transgender.
That's not exactly what I said.
What did you say?
I said the reason I am so popular and I'm so famous is that there's a large contingent of men who don't want to wear makeup, who still want to make money, go to the gym, be strong, drive a fast car, be traditionally masculine, and don't want to be shamed for that, and they don't want to be called toxic for that. That is the reason I'm so massive.
And I just need to know, and maybe I'll try to find it right now. I just want to know, like, be traditionally masculine. Does tradition? So he said, drive a fast car. You heard what he just said, right? Do those things equate to masculinity for him? Because to me, those don't have anything to do with masculinity. I think masculinity is your character, how you carry yourself, how you treat other people, how you treat women, how you treat children, how you treat your coworkers, and above that, I'm more focused on, is the Most High pleased with what I'm doing or not? Forget about masculine or feminine. Is the Most High pleased with the way that I'm conducting my life or not? That's where I reside.
Famous. That is what I said.
What do you think of transgender people?
That's nothing to do with me. I'm not transgender, and I don't understand the issue like they do. They
Are you transphobic? Do you consider yourself that?
Transphobic? What? Afraid?
Well, it kind of, yeah.
I don't live in fear, my friend. I have no problem.
You have a dislike of transgender people?
I don't know any transgender people.
Do you have a dislike of what they stand for, what they are?
No. Why would I?
I don't know.
That's not my issue. That's not my issue. And that's actually quite interesting, because when I was attacked, a lot of these stupid articles like BuzzFeed, because it's ridiculous, that first point proves anyone with a brain knows that that's garbage. When they attacked me, they lump a whole bunch of things in together.
Like, I wonder, did they rehearse this? Because you see what I'm talking about now, right? How he's talking into the camera, and he's like, it's almost like he's center in the camera. They're like, hey, we're going to make sure you're good to go, Andrew, on the show. Like, did they work this out? Because it feels like it, don't it?
Together. They say misogynistic, racist, transphobic. They just put them all together at random. I'm mixed race.
By the way,
I don't know where they get these. They just get these buzzwords and put them in a sentence.
By the way, I completely agree.
It's crazy.
I've had the same thing done to me.
Okay.
And I'm not calling you anything. I'm asking you what you personally believe you are.
It's not an issue I discuss. What I do discuss is that.
So you support transgender people?
I support individual liberty. I'm a libertarian.
Yeah. So you support transgender people?
Sure. Sure. Why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but my point is, as a whole, you're saying that I'm saying I don't want to see men in dresses. I'm saying no.
You support gay people?
Sure. Yeah. I'm saying there's a large contingent of men in the world who like the idea of the traditional masculine view of the world, who feel happy when they watch 80s action heroes with big muscles and they run around. And there's nothing toxically masculine about having a fast car and a beautiful girlfriend and making a bunch of money. And
nothing at all.
Absolutely. And those are the people who are my fans. I'm saying,
but the problem is, okay, I'm going to interrupt you just to say this. No.
Okay, but you're saying that I have a problem with men in dresses. I'm saying no. The people who watch my content.
Asked you that question, you've answered.
Yeah, but the people who watch my content don't want to see men in dresses. Clearly, I don't wear a dress. That's the point I'm making.
Why they're watching your content.
No,
you're not wearing a dress.
No, but that's the point I'm making. That's the point I was making. There's a large contingent of men who are not interested in the things that perhaps the YouTube algorithm's trying to feed them.
I think there are lots of. Look, when you support man,
I wonder if Andrew Tate put on makeup before he came on the show. You know what I mean? Because to me, I think it's real elementary to make masculinity about things on the outside and not things on the inside. And that's just me. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's because I would be classified as gay. I don't know. Maybe it's, I don't know. I just don't think, maybe because I'm a Sigma male, I just don't think masculinity is something that is measured all on the outside. I think it's your values. It's who you are as a person rather than what is outward. You see what I'm saying? But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Masculinity and masculine traits, I'm with you. Right?
Okay, so you agree a man should protect and provide for a woman?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you agree if you were walking down the street with a woman, you'd be...
And the children. And I think a man should provide and protect for his family. Immediate family, parents. Like, I don't think that it's all about a woman.
Responsible with her safety?
Yeah.
Cool, absolutely. So if that woman wanted to walk alone,
I don't think I have authority over the woman as we do that.
Okay, so let me ask you another question, Piers, because we are professionals. Let's say your woman decided she wanted to take a nice little walk through the south side of Chicago at 2 a.m. and she wanted you to go with her, and you were responsible for fighting and dying on the spot if she was attacked. Don't you think you would say to her, no, we're not going out right now, it's not safe?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd have authority to make the decision. So
no, I wouldn't.
So
I would say I
we
don't
agree.
think you should if she decides to.
It does feel slightly extreme, but it does also remind me of like where we are in the world, that like his example is so extreme, like fight and die on the spot. It feels extreme, but it's also, I mean, that's what's happening in the world. The Las Vegas stabbing, 6 people injured, a couple people died. Like, you just never know what's going to happen. So I would encourage you to pray about wherever you're at, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going on vacation, be in prayer about that, because it does not seem like the time. And that doesn't mean that we live in fear. It means that we exercise wisdom and prudence, right?
It was her own volition.
Well, if she decides, you're not going to stop
I have
her.
no power to stop her.
Completely.
But you think you do.
No, I don't think I have power
You
to stop her.
clearly do.
No, I think I have power to make the decision. I think, no, that's not sensible.
So if you have the power to make the decision, you have the power to stop her.
No, because
and that's where we differ. And that's why I think it's interesting about you. I don't think you really think through what you're saying.
I think through what I'm saying so carefully.
Yeah, but Andrew,
Piers.
what you've literally just said is that you have the power to stop
No,
her.
I said I don't have the power to stop her. I'm not going to lock her in the room. I'm saying that.
So if she wants to go on her own,
then she's going to go.
Then
but
you
as
don't have authority to stop her.
Okay, but as a couple, if we're going to sit there and decide if we're going to take this,
You asked me, would I feel a sense of responsibility for her safety? Absolutely.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
So
would
let
I
me finish,
have the
Piers.
power or authority to stop her doing it? No.
No, of course not. So let me finish, Piers. You're not going to stop her walking out the hotel. Of course, it's her decision. She's a sovereign individual. My point is that usually in a couple, you'd sit there as a team and you discuss, and perhaps on certain issues, the woman will know more about X.
Okay, now it seems like his whole idea 46 minutes into the interview has changed, and now it's a team and all of that, which I agree with. That sounds good to me. A team, sit there and work together. A team sounds much different than property.
X and she'll decide X, and the man might know more about Y and he'll decide Y. So I'm saying if we're as a couple and we're sitting there and deciding as a couple, as a team, and she says she wants to take this late night stroll, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to veto this one. I'm going to call veto.
Do you believe in
it's dangerous, which to a degree would give me in that particular scenario a degree of authority. If she said, I don't want to listen to you, Andrew,
It doesn't give you authority.
If she says, I don't want to listen to you, Andrew, I want to go on that walk, then what can I do? Say, well, then
you don't have authority.
Then I wish you the best, my love.
Then you don't have authority.
Cool. Then it's a semantic argument.
Not really.
I think it is.
Okay, I can agree with that semantic argument. Authority or not, it's an agreement. It sounds like to me.
It's a complete opposite of what you said you had, which was authority.
No problem, Piers. No problem. But I think
Let
we
me ask
actually
you about what do you believe about depression? Do you believe depression is a real thing?
I believe that feeling depressed is real. I don't believe depression as a clinical disease is real now.
Really?
Correct.
You don't believe people can be clinically depressed?
I think PTSD is very real. Unfortunately, I have some friends who suffer from that. I know that.
How can PTSD be real, but depression not? Clinical depression not real. This is one of the instances where I think that he didn't think about what he was saying, but it also goes in this idea of masculinity. When you have this idea of masculinity, that you are ultimately in control of everything, then you know what I'm saying? I guess this is where we end up, and I need to change my battery on my camera.
Feeling depressed is real. I believe that the number one power you have against these things are trying to take control of your own mind and affecting your own life. I believe that it's not healthy to hand over all your power and believe that depression is an outside disease that you can't affect. I know that when I've had difficult periods in my life, and also many of my friends, like I've said, suffer from PTSD and been through terrible things. I've lived a very difficult life, and I know people who have, that the things that made them feel better is when they woke up and said, you know what, I'm not going to allow this to damage me anymore. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to get up and I'm going to fight this as hard as I can.
And by the way, on that, I agree.
So we agree.
My favorite speech is the Rocky Balboa one.
Okay, so then we agree. No, we didn't.
Here's where we don't agree.
Piers.
You don't. No, hang on. You got to let me interject when I don't agree with you, right? Where I don't agree with you is that there's no such thing as clinical depression. There absolutely is.
Well,
it's a proven scientific medical reality. There's a different argument about have we gone a bit too soft, right, in schools and all the rest of it. Absolutely. Do I think some people moan and whine too much about their lot in life? Definitely.
Okay.
Are we a victimhood society? 100%.
Okay.
Is there such a thing as clinical depression? Absolutely.
So if
And my argument is that if you actually bracket everybody who's not clinically depressed and doesn't have the genuine medical condition, then actually if millions of people are deemed to have depression, the ones who really need the help don't get it. Well, that's my point.
Well, that I would agree with. You're right. I think it's certainly an overused term.
But you don't accept there is such a thing as clinical depression.
No, I don't.
And that to me is a damaging view.
Okay. Well, let me explain why. If someone comes to me and says, I'm clinically depressed or I feel very, very sad, I would say the first thing you need to do is stop accepting the identity of a clinically depressed person. Stop accepting you have no control over this. And what you need to do is stop identifying that way, and let's work together to try and fight against it.
There isn't an eminent doctor in the world who would tell you there is no such thing as clinical depression. Who would not tell you that some people it's simply beyond their control.
Johann Hari wrote a book saying exactly that.
So I think when it comes to depression and clinical depression, it does exist. I think a lot of mental health is genetic sometimes, genetic predisposition. Also, I think bipolar is real. I think mental illness is real, and there are abnormalities within humans. And I think certain people probably do need medication. I think clinical depression is different than feeling sad. You know what I'm saying? Like it's different than having a bad day or hearing some bad news. And I think that he's sort of relating clinical depression, Andrew Tate is, to feeling sad. Also, I think that just because you may have clinical depression does not mean that you are a person who just accepts that diagnosis and doesn't do anything with your life. And you know what I'm saying? Like you're a lame duck kind of person. I do think at the same time, mental health has been glamorized in a lot of people's music, like the emo stuff and then the rappers and being, high and on drugs all the time. And like they sort of glamorize mental health and, also Discord servers. There's entire Discord servers about mental health things that not in a healthy way either, like glorifying it. So I do think there's that aspect to it, but clinical depression does exist. And I don't think it's right to generalize everyone with clinical depression as being somebody who's not getting after life, because I think there are people who have clinical depression and are still doing, living their dreams.
My friend.
He's not an eminent doctor.
No, but
he's a journalist.
I said depression wasn't real long ago and was attacked for it. Then Johann Hari wrote a book, which
What's
actually...
What's going to do with Johann Hari?
Because he wrote a book proving me right. Most people...
Johann Hari's a journalist.
Sure. And my point is that a lot of people who are clinically depressed are suffering with something in their life. And if you fix the problem in their life, perhaps they won't feel depressed anymore. That's not a disease.
Yeah, but Andrew...
That's situational.
Andrew, you're simply wrong.
If that's what you believe, Piers.
Situational depression, seasonal depression, sad is different than, we could argue those are three different things. When it comes to clinical depression, that's something totally separate.
That's what I believe.
I don't believe in things that take power away.
There is not an eminent doctor in the world
Piers,
that would agree with it.
Piers,
do you think you know more than doctors?
I can't become clinically depressed.
Why do you know?
Because I don't believe in it. I can't be haunted by a ghost if I don't believe in ghosts.
Well, that's like...
See, this is why the idea of, I think, he kind of does make the case on why this would be toxic masculinity, even though I would need that to be defined. But I just think it's kind of like careless. I'm not prepared to say it's toxic masculinity because that's a label they came up with. I think it's ignorance, maybe selective ignorance. He said he doesn't believe in things that take power away. So what happens if, he gets injured and breaks a bone? Does he not believe he broke a bone because that takes his, power and performance away? You get what I mean? Like it's selective ignorance and this idea of toughness and this machismo that he has to keep up.
I'm not saying I'm never going to die because I don't believe in it. It's ridiculous.
Perhaps, but if it allows me to live a life where I feel happy and
But here's
content
where you
within
see,
myself.
this is that little area where you lose me.
No, I don't lose you.
You are, because
Piers,
somebody with your
Piers,
following says
the
there is no
thousands
such
of people,
thing.
the thousands of people who have emailed me saying my doctor told me I was clinically depressed and it's a disease that I have got in my brain and I can't be fixed. And I started listening to you and I realized that that's not the case and I can fix my own life. And you're the only person who has ever helped me.
Oh, Andrew.
Thousands of people have
Andrew,
emailed me that exact.
We also have to talk about this part too. There are people who have been misdiagnosed with clinical depression. Let's not act like the pharmaceutical companies ain't just like doctors. What's that movie? There was a movie about doctors. I think her name's Anne Hathaway. She was in it, Love and Other Drugs or something like that, where doctors are paid to prescribe and they overprescribe. And remember, when I was growing up in the 80s, everybody was put on ADHD and all this stuff. So Ritalin. But I think that's different. So maybe some of the people that he's talking about, maybe they didn't already have a healthy lifestyle. I do believe, you should work out, you should get enough sleep, you should eat right. And all of those things play a role into your health and what's going on in your body. And so maybe what these people started to do is they sort of created a different situation for themselves. And in doing so, they were no longer depressed. There is that too. You get what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to know because this is like a snake oil salesman. Like thousands of emails. Yeah, is that good data? I mean, how do we know those people were actually clinically depressed and not just trying to, gas up Andrew Tate?
Email.
If you think you are single-handedly curing people of clinical depression, you are living in cloud cuckoo.
I am reading the emails of people who I have cured of clinical depression.
You're reading emails from people who have believed you when you say there isn't such a thing, and they've probably never been diagnosed clinical depressed. They just want to go along with what Andrew Tate says.
I don't think so.
I think your view of that is dangerous.
I respect that you think my view is dangerous, and I respect you have the right to view that, to think that. I think that clinical depression, I actually agree with you, is massively overdiagnosed. I've already said that PTSD is a very real thing. I've already said
hang on.
Okay.
Again, you're misquoting me. I did not say clinical depression is massively overdiagnosed. I said that people who claim to be depressed but don't have clinical depression, I think that is massively overblown, right? In other words, there are a lot of people who just have a bad day and declare, I've got depression.
Yeah, that's not clinical depression.
Say, well, have you been to a doctor? Have you been clinically diagnosed? If you have, and you have clinical depression, that's one thing. But if you haven't, we could probably work on some mental strength and resilience skills with you. But a clinically depressed person has an absolutely proven medical condition that is beyond their control.
Not according to me and many others, my friend.
Well, look, what do you know about it, honestly?
I know.
You're not a doctor, are you? Not trained, are you?
I'm not a doctor.
You're not a psychiatrist. You're none of those things.
Sure.
You're a guy on the make. He's done very well for himself, spouting stuff off, much of which I agree with, as you've seen in the interview, but some of which is ludicrous, and that's one of them.
It's not ludicrous.
It is.
It's not.
If you said to me, we're in a victimhood society, has got to stop, I'm with you.
Okay.
At the moment you try and deny clinical depression.
I believe feeling depressed is real. I do not believe it's a disease that you catch from the sky and you cannot affect. I believe that no matter what happens, I believe you have control of your own mind. And
you can believe that clinical depression is real and that you're in control and you can influence your life. The two things can exist simultaneously.
You can fight against it. I believe if you change your circumstances in your life, you may feel different. I'll give you a quick example. I had a guy who emailed me saying he was clinically depressed and he was going to kill himself. I obviously am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. I told him, because I replied to my emails. I said, have you been to a psychiatrist? He said, yes, I'm clinically depressed. I've been on these pills, this amount of time. I'm on antidepressants. It doesn't work. I said, I don't know what to say to you besides this. And he said he lost his girlfriend. That's why I became clinically depressed. I said, listen, go to the gym.
That sounds situational. Which one could argue, I'm not a doctor either, but one could argue situational depression could be different than clinical depression. And just off the basis of it, to me, it sounds like situational depression is just for a time, and then you have your treatment plan. And then clinical depression is more ongoing. It's a lifestyle change with both, and that's how you can influence it.
Six-pack first. Once you've got a six-pack, email me again. If you still feel like killing yourself, I don't know what else to say to you, but I'd say strong body is a strong mind. Go train. He started sending me progress pictures, emailing me him getting in better shape, and eventually got a six-pack. He's now a professional bodybuilder. And he said, I can't believe I was considering that. I feel so much better, etc. The doctor was telling him he was clinically depressed and couldn't cure it. He started taking control of his own life, and now he felt better. Now, I'm not saying it's the case for everybody.
No.
I'm just saying.
Here's my question, though. Have you seen the guy's medical records?
Of course not. I just told you the story.
So you're just taking his word for it?
I am taking the word of a man who emailed me with a bunch of medication and specific doses.
You're denying proven science because one guy writes to you who you help, and you've not seen any evidence he ever had clinical depression diagnosed.
I'm denying the idea that.
And on the back of it, you go on your rants in public to tens of millions of people denying something because this guy writes to you and says he had it and you cured him. And I think that's a dangerous mindset, Andrew.
That's fine.
And that's where you don't have a responsible view of your influence over
disagree.
people.
It's very responsible because I'm saving people's lives. I disagree that if you feel depressed, I disagree that you cannot affect it and change your life and take control and fix.
Once again, that's not what depression means. It does not mean that there's nothing you could do. And I will say that I've been in the Army over 20 years. It's been 22 years. Over 22 years. Wow. I have seen people be diagnosed with different mental health issues, and there is this idea or something can happen to certain people that, oh, this is my life and I'm going to have to live with this, and that is like a sign that they are in depression and stuff. But I would always come with edification and positive reinforcement that you can do something. Like, you're still alive, you still can work out, you still can overall be healthy, even though you struggle with PTSD or clinical depression or whatever else it is. And I agree with that. But a diagnosis is a diagnosis. And if the treatment is working, then it's working. If it's not working, then you need to find something else. And I don't believe in overly medicating. I've known people who the VA has prescribed them about 9 or 10 pills to take daily. And I'm just like, that's insane. Maybe you need one of these. And what if these are interacting with one another? And this particular person had struggled with PTSD. I'm like, what if it's causing you to not be able to react in a healthy manner? Because all of the pills are you're on a cocktail and you don't know what's working. And, then you go through withdrawals and all this stuff. I'm like, this really isn't healthy for you. And so I encourage this person to go back to their medical professional and work that out. And I think now they're on more natural means, the stuff Joe Biden needs to go on and legalize. Not that I'm a proponent of smoking it, but it's probably better than pharmaceuticals in a lot of ways.
Yourself and feel happier. I disagree with that.
Do you think
I refuse to accept that there are people out there who cannot become happy, contented individuals. I refuse to accept we live in a world where God has created people who, no matter how hard they work and how good their life becomes, can't be happy. I don't accept that. I accept that the universe is a very giving place and that God loves all of us. And if you try your best and you work hard, you can become a better person. And I also will argue with you, and I'll counter the point that you sitting here on your platform telling people they have clinical depression, there's nothing they can do about it, is far more dangerous. Okay, well then, if they have clinical depression...
Why do you misquote me?
No, because you're saying...
You hate being misquoted.
No, you're saying if people have clinical depression...
I never said there's nothing to do about it. They go to a doctor and they get diagnosed and they get help.
Then I would argue the point that if somebody...
It's the opposite of what you just said I said.
I would argue the point that if somebody has depression of any kind, whether it's clinical, whether it exists or not, whether they feel depressed or not, whatever, that taking control of their life, taking personal responsibility, and working hard is always going to be the positive, best thing they can possibly do for them.
Isn't seeking treatment part of that? I would argue, somebody in their right mind, somebody that has their mental faculty about them, like, when you need help, when you need to go to the doctor, like soldiers know when they need to go to behavioral health. Like, if you are in your right mind, when you need help. And generally speaking, hopefully you have a support system around you. So that way, you know what I mean? They can support you and maybe even be a mirror that, hey, I do need to go get help. You get what I'm saying? But I feel like to go to the doctor and get help is something that he doesn't believe in. Maybe because sometimes I wonder how much has somebody truly been through when they don't believe in these things. I didn't believe in mental health medication until I needed it. Until I found myself in a position in which I needed it. And so I wonder, how much struggle has Andrew Tate really been through that he doesn't believe in these things? And maybe, just maybe, this is a time where he's going through things in his life where it will be the reckoning for him. I'm not sure. But he seems to have this idea that seeking help from a doctor for clinical depression is the ultimate weakness, and that that if you do that, then you're not doing anything to change your life, which I totally disagree with.
Their life going forward.
How positive is
around
it?
them. So sitting here saying I don't believe in clinical depression, you don't believe in depression. No, I don't. I believe that people can take control and fight against things. Right. I believe in personal sovereignty.
Right. Fine.
Good. So we agree.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't.
Piers, you're on my side. You're afraid of being canceled along with me.
As I said to you from the start,
that's all
I agree with a lot of what you say.
Completely. So
but I'm taking you to task over the stuff I don't agree with.
Sure.
And I'm just not sure you understand why it's wrong, which is in itself quite revealing. Let me talk to you about Alex. Let me talk to you about Alex Jones, right? Who I have a bit of history with. He tried to get me deported from the United States.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. What is your view of Alex Jones?
I think that Alex Jones is a sovereign individual who, very much like the rabid left, deserves a chance to speak on his points of view. I think that the truth on issues is usually somewhere in the middle between two extremes. And
you think Sandy Hook was staged?
I don't know anything about Sandy Hook.
Really? He's just been
rabid left. Anybody who uses these terms, I always side eye. You know what I mean? Like, because what does that even mean? And, when you really think about the people who are canceling one another, it's not a bunch of people who are canceling someone. It's the tech companies, it's the media companies that are canceling someone. The people have little influence to do with somebody being canceled. I mean, prove me wrong. I could be wrong on that, but let me know.
Sued by the families for millions and millions.
I have no idea.
You don't know anything about it?
No.
So why would you support someone in public when you know nothing about the most infamous
When
thing
have I supported him in public?
You have supported him in public.
I've been on his podcast.
Yeah, but you said nice things about him.
I say nice things about lots of people.
What do you think of Alex Jones?
I said nice things about you, Piers.
That's fine. so you should. I'm a nice person.
So to sit and say that I've been on a podcast and I say nice things about him.
But you said you support his right to speak about things like Sandy Hook?
I don't know Sandy Hook. I don't know. And
you know what it was?
It was a mass shooting.
Of school children.
Okay. But to sit and it's actually, no, let's stop for a second. Please don't interrupt me. Here's why I know why you're good at your job. First, you interrupt people a lot, which is good. It's a good skill.
Actually,
and then there you go. Prove me right.
But here's exactly
and the timing's good.
Here's exactly what I do. I only interrupt people like you when you either refuse to answer the question or answer a completely different one.
Sure.
And I want to remind you of what the question was.
Fair enough.
Or when you misquote me back, which you've done repeatedly through the interview, where you say, you see, Piers, you agree with me. And the viewer who's been watching will go, no, he didn't.
Cool. No problem. The other thing you do is you try and set these traps like now. So you're saying
what's the trap you think I'm setting?
You're saying that I agree with every single point of view a man has.
I literally didn't say that.
You're saying, well, you support Alex Jones.
Why would you misquote me?
Because you're saying you support Alex Jones and you said you've been on his podcast and he said this. I don't know
what do you think of Alex Jones?
I don't know everything he said.
What do you think of him?
I think on his podcast he was cordial. I think he was professional on his podcast. I've also done podcasts with rabid leftists and people who openly hate me.
Is it wrong?
I do a podcast circuit. Okay. So and I don't know everything he's ever said.
When somebody like
I don't know what what you're trying to get here because I did a podcast.
If you let me get a word in edgeways, I'll tell you.
It's a lame trick.
If you let me get a word in, sure. I will tell you.
Let's go.
Alex Jones said that Sandy Hook didn't happen. It was staged by actors.
Okay.
This compounded the appalling grief of the families of those poor 20 children who were gunned to pieces by a lunatic with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. They were already grief-stricken beyond belief, and this guy poured petrol onto that grief quite deliberately.
What I would love to know, and if you're going to say such thing, like when Alex Jones first started off, he seemed to be completely different than who he is today. And he seemed to now I believe he is part of, if you heard of COINTELPRO, I believe he is an insider. He's probably on the CIA payroll or something like that. Like he's a well-connected person, and he pissed off the wrong people. But I would love to know, and maybe I'll do a show about it. I don't know. But what proof did Alex Jones have to say such things? Because as a person who, he got Infowars.com, he used to do all these documentaries. He did stuff about 9/11, and he always seemed to come with the receipts and the proof. So for him to say this about Sandy Hook, I wonder what proof did he share at the time? And maybe I'll go and look at that for them to, for him to be able to say such things.
To make a huge amount of money from his InfoWars fake news bullshit. And as a result, a lot of the families have now sued him, and they've won. And he's going to have to pay back tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in damages to these families. And quite right, it won't do anything about the pain he caused them. Some of them actually had people turn up outside their houses with guns because Alex Jones had told them that these parents were making it all up. They were all staged actors. It was all run by the government. So I simply say to you, now I've told you that, what is your view of Alex Jones?
I don't see why any of that has to do with me. It's very interesting. I've done the guy's podcast. I know him well. He was professional and courteous to me. When I meet somebody and they show me respect, I show them back. Respect. That's what I do, as I did with you.
You respect him?
If somebody shows me respect, I show them respect back.
So if Adolf Hitler showed you respect, you'd respect him back?
That's a stupid question, Piers.
It's not. It's a logical extension of your argument.
No, if in 1931 I was walking through Germany and
yeah, I think a human deserves respect. I mean, at the end of the day, that's still the Imago Dei, no matter what this person has done, and that's what Yahusha stands for. So that's what I stand for. Even with the news that Jeffrey Dahmer was baptized before he was killed in prison. Like, I don't know the content of his heart. If he really meant it, if he really repented, I'm not sure. But if he really did, that's the world that we live in. That's the God that we serve, who confounds the wise. He's wiser than all of us. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And so I think every human is deserving of respect as the image bearers of the Most High.
Man come up to me and said, sorry for bumping into you. I'd say, sorry, no problem, mate. I'd show respect back. I don't know. What are you trying to say? That I sanction the Holocaust?
You literally just said, if somebody respects you, you respect them back.
I say, if somebody shows me respect, I show respect back. That's a good way to go through life.
Whoever it is.
If somebody shows me respect and is courteous to me, I'm courteous back. Yes.
How can you respect somebody who caused such misery and pain to Sandy?
I have no idea the specifics of the thing you're discussing. I don't understand any of it.
Well,
I don't know anything about it. You've told me your version of events.
When did you go on the podcast?
I was on the podcast about four times in the last 4 years. I did one relatively recently.
So four times you went on Alex Jones's podcast.
Correct.
Promoting him, helping him make money.
I don't think it was promoting and helping him because...
Well, it's his podcast.
Well, yeah, but I've been on the podcasts of people who absolutely hate me. I've been on liberal left-wing podcasts. I've been on feminist podcasts. And no, you just sat here saying I would like you to agree. Perhaps we can agree on this point that I'm not a feminist. I go on feminist podcasts. I do a podcast circuit. You're
not a feminist?
I don't know.
What do you think a feminist is?
Well, let's not change subject here, Piers. Stay on the subject.
You mentioned feminism.
Completely. But you're trying to get away from the point, because what you did is you're trying to say, because I did a podcast, I sanction all of this person's views. And I'm saying I do 5 podcasts a week. I do 5 podcasts a week, and I don't sanction 100% the views of any other person on the planet, because I'm an individual and he has an individual views, as do you. So I don't know why you're trying to come at me with one of his views and pretend that's something to do with me.
Because it's a pretty big view.
No, but it's a lame...
Okay, I'm with Andrew right here. This is Piers Morgan Tactic 101. This is what he does in journalism.
Trick, Piers, and you're better than this. So let's move on.
Would you?
It's lame, and let's move on.
Putin had a podcast, would you go on it?
Sure.
You would? Great. Okay, then we know what you're talking about.
If Vladimir Putin had a podcast, I'd go on it. If Joe Biden had a podcast, I'd go on it. If a feminist has a podcast, I'll go on it. If Piers Morgan has a podcast, I'll go on it. If Alex Jones, I don't see the point you're making. There's no point here. You're digging, but there's nothing to find.
Well, I'm not. I'm taking your position that if somebody shows you respect them.
I think that...
I'm saying there are lots of people in the world I do not respect. If Vladimir Putin showed me respect, I would not respect him.
That's your opinion. But
no, it's my view. What's your
that's
view?
Your view. Well, your
view is you would.
You're sitting here, Piers, saying that I'm on uncensored show And in your intro, you said that it's important that we don't have echo chambers and we have varying
Correct.
and that we have varying opinions.
Correct.
But then you're saying the people you don't like, you wouldn't go on their podcast.
No.
So you are a hypocrite.
No.
I will go on anybody's podcast and discuss any point.
I don't think you understand what censorship means, do you? Like a lot of words we've had problems with today.
You're just saying
what do you think censorship means?
No, but the point I'm trying to make here.
Hang on. What do you think censorship means?
Don't hide from the fact that you're saying you will only do podcasts with people you like.
Why do you think that's censorship?
No, that's your prerogative. My prerogative is
What does it do with censorship?
I'll discuss opinions with anybody, and I've done hard left wing. Why are you not asking me about the podcasts I've done for the people who are hard liberal
By the
left
way,
wing?
I don't care whether they're left or right.
Okay.
Extremists to me are all nuts, right?
Then we agree.
Yes.
So perfect.
Good.
Next subject.
All right. Here's my next subject. It's a very serious case here.
Jesus. And before we move on, sorry, Piers, but before you move on, I do find it kind of disingenuous. And I know we're on a show and I don't have a personal problem with you, but it is kind of disingenuous to try and sit here and lump me in with some school shooting. That's nothing to do with me. That's nothing to do with me on any level.
Let me respond.
That was that was a low blow from Piers Morgan on that. I'm with Andrew Tate on this point. But that's what Piers Morgan does, tries to set traps for people. He's pretty good at it. I mean, obviously he has his own show.
On any level.
Let me explain. Like you just said, you've been on this podcast 4 times.
In 4 years.
Since he said the whole thing was staged.
I don't know when he
said. I think the fact that a smart guy like you wants me to believe you had no idea that Alex Jones, who's been in the news now for the last 2 years for being sued by these families for the most heinous thing imaginable of pouring petrol onto their grief by claiming that shooting was staged. The fact that you're pretending you didn't know about any of that.
It's not about pretending.
You've been on his podcast 4 times, supporting him and making him money. So damn right, I'm going to call you out on it.
When I do a podcast, if you think I spend time analyzing the point of view of that person and everything they've ever said for years beforehand.
It's not years, it was minutes in most cases.
Years and years.
When did you last go on his podcast?
You trying to lump me in and attack me for a person whose podcast I do having a view is absolutely childish. Because I've done a bunch of podcasts with people.
You would do a podcast.
I've done a bunch of podcasts with people who are advocating for things.
I agree with that. If you're so what Andrew Tate is saying here, it's pretty much his job, right? That's his hustle to go on podcasts. So if you just talk to people that you agree with all the time, then where's your mental agility and how do you keep that elasticity with your brain to, continue to learn and get your views out? It's more pertinent for a person who's always learning, and in his particular case, creates a internet persona with controversial views. Obviously, he's not going to go on people's shows that believe everything he does because he likes to say controversial things. So what's going to make him popular? And they probably found out this works in the algorithm. So he's going to go on shows where or do podcasts with people that he doesn't agree with so he can say those things and be pumped up in the algorithm and be more internet famous.
That I do not agree with on every single level. In fact, most of my podcasts are me disagreeing with people. So it's completely crazy that you're trying to lump me in with that. That's cheap. That's cheap.
You are completely misconstruing the point of what I'm saying. I think deliberately.
No, what you're trying is a cheap trick. And I'm just making it clear to the audience.
Cheap trick. I'm just curious where your moral line is.
It's a cheap trick.
Where's your moral line?
I disagree with the points of view with the majority of the people I do podcasts with. So it's a very cheap trick you're trying here. So
when people invent vile things to make themselves rich off the back of families of little kids who've been blown to pieces with a machine gun or a semi-automatic version of a machine gun, I think that is actually a line I wouldn't cross. I wouldn't be happy to go on someone's podcast when they've been responsible for doing that. It's not about political views or differences of opinion over facts. It's about somebody deliberately inventing a pack of lies to compound the grief of families. And I'm curious, you don't think you have any need to go down any kind of moral quandary about people like that before you continue to allow them to use you for their own promotion.
He didn't use me. He didn't use me for
Why does he have you on the...
And how do we know that Piers Morgan isn't doing the same thing? I mean, right now, this is what media people do. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever's going to get you more popular, like he has a show. Piers Morgan has a show called Uncensored. So obviously we can ascertain that there's going to be some type of controversial element to what he's saying. And he himself is a polarizing figure. So is he not doing the same thing by bringing Andrew Tate on? And he says that he agrees with him on a lot of stuff, but I only heard like one, maybe two things thus far. And he says he brought him on the show to discuss the things that he disagrees with him about. So how is that not the same thing? So Piers Morgan takes the L at this point on this particular point.
Podcast.
Because we disagreed and discussed points like we're doing with you right now.
Did you call him out on that?
Are you using me? We didn't discuss that.
I'm not using. I'm giving you a platform most people aren't giving you right now to show the world who you really are.
Fantastic. So neither of us are using each other. I'm here on your show. I'm providing you with content.
Exactly.
You're giving me a platform, and nobody's using each other. It's mutual. We don't agree on a whole bunch of issues.
It's fine.
And here we are.
I think we've had a robust exchange.
Yeah, just like I've done on nearly every other podcast. And if someone were to come and say to me in the future, there's something, heaven forbid, there's a skeleton in your closet, and someone were to come to me and say, you were on Piers Morgan's show, did you know he's X or he's done X? I would say that's absolutely nothing to do with me.
Right. But I
make the same point protecting you. I don't know what you do. I don't know your personal life.
I can guarantee one thing. I will not be inventing stories about the families of.
I hope not. I hope you're a righteous person.
I don't know. I'm not claiming to be a righteous person.
I don't know.
I'm just saying that I just think it's interesting that you have no moral compulsion about going on people.
It's not about moral compulsions. It's about I don't know what you do, Piers. You could have a bunch of skeletons in your closet, my friend. I don't have a clue. I'm here on your TV show.
I'm sure we all have lots of skeletons. Let me ask you this. Interesting about the feminism thing.
Sure.
Do you identify as a feminist?
I think that women and men are fantastic. Both of us are fantastic. I think women reproduce. I think women need to be respected, protected, provided for. I think that modern feminism is kind of hard for me to even truly understand.
What do you think it means? What is feminism?
I think that the idea of feminism is that men and women are equal under the law.
And do you believe that?
Completely.
We should be treated completely equal.
Yeah, but we are equal under the law. Wouldn't you agree?
Not really. I think there are still some issues in the world where, I mean, certainly in workplace, the gender pay gap remains. They're not treated equally in most cases, women.
Well, that can be discussed, the gender pay gap. I think that's already been discussed at length. I think that there's actually...
You think women should go to work?
I think women should work completely.
You do?
Why wouldn't they?
Because in the parts of the country, of the world you were mentioning earlier, that have different views of women, they don't go to work.
In the parts of the world that person from the podcast was from, for the point I made, yeah, they didn't. But
I think it's important at this point. Let's identify or define feminism. So Wikipedia says feminism is a range of socio-political movements and ideologies that aim to define and establish the political, economic, personal, and social equality of the sexes. Feminism incorporates the position that society prioritizes the male point of view and that women are treated unjustly in these societies. Efforts to change this include fighting against gender stereotypes and establishing educational, professional, and interpersonal opportunities and outcomes for women that are equal to those for men. Feminism.
I don't live in those parts of the world. I think women should be free to work if they choose. I think it's very important that the family unit remains. I do believe that in my personal view, the most important and respectful thing a woman can do is become a mother. I think that having children is a beautiful thing. But obviously, if a woman wants to work and wants to have a career, especially now with paternity leave or maternity leave, and she can manage to do both, why wouldn't I want women to work? I don't know why anyone would ever assume I don't want women to work or think women can't work, because I said that I should keep them safe sometimes.
Good.
No, but it's interesting because you have to look at this, Piers. It's interesting how people extrapolate. Andrew said that he's responsible for a woman's safety, and he said that gives him authority to make decisions for her safety, and that's been misconstrued, and he's a bad person. He believes that women are property. So, but now we believe that Andrew doesn't believe in love. Andrew doesn't believe women should work. Andrew, I don't know where all of that comes from.
Well, that's why I'm glad we've had a chance to discuss
completely. I believe women are sovereign individuals, and they can make any choice they so desire. I think that it's important that we remember.
So how does that equate to a woman, like his brother's wife being his brother's property, though? How can a woman be a sovereign individual if she's property? And I think that's the point for me in this conversation. How can a woman be the property of a man she's married to and yet still be a sovereign individual?
That a man has a duty. I think I certainly in my relationship have a financial responsibility to provide for my woman. My woman would never have to work unless she wanted to, because I'm the kind of person who works hard enough that she wouldn't have to.
Should young men, though, all aspire to be like you?
Should young men aspire to work very hard, have no criminal record, become multimillionaires, protect and provide for the women close to them, be sovereign so they can stand up and have their own points of view in face of cancellation, be able to not be mentally intimidated when they go on national TV and there's traps set up for them? Yeah, I believe that confident, strong men who stand up and protect and provide for women are a good thing for the world and a good force for the world. And I don't think that I put a magic spell on anybody. I think there's a whole bunch of men in the world who understands my value. And if men grow up to be like me, you're going to have a whole bunch of people with no criminal record, dedicated athletes who protect and provide for the people close to them, are fantastic for the economy. And I'm certainly not the worst influence out here, Piers. You have Little Nas twerking on the devil on music videos, which our children are digesting. You have drill artists singing about stabbing people to death in the middle of a knife crime epidemic. You have rabid psychopaths on whether the right or the left announcing violence on the other side. You have all these insanities in the world. And because I sit here and say, yeah, perhaps now you've laid it out and it offended you, I understand.
I didn't say it offended me.
Okay, cool.
I just read you the things.
You read things that you say they can be offensive, and some people are offended.
Well, some people definitely were offended.
Absolutely. That's fine.
And honestly, I think some of the things you said were genuinely offensive and misogynist.
Okay, so they offended you. Like I said earlier, so they offended you.
No, hang on.
Just because you think somebody said something misogynist doesn't mean that you're offended by it. You're just calling it out. I do think it's a very misogynist idea to call a woman the property of a man. Humans, in my faith, in my belief system, humans do not have dominion over another human. That's just the way it is. The Most High is the authority over humans, and even He gives us free will.
Fine. I said they offended you. You interrupted me, and now you're saying they offended you, which is fine. But the point I'm trying to make is this: I'm not the devil. There are certainly worse people than me, and
I don't disagree
and they exist.
with
And I'm saying that my core tenets for the people who don't understand me are self-accountability, so I'm accountable for everything I've ever said. My core tenets are responsibility, so I'm responsible for everything I've said. My core tenets are traditional masculinity to a degree, which involves protecting and providing for women. And I'll make another point here that needs to be said. The number of women who have stood up and stuck up for me is ignored. Thousands of women are making videos saying, I've met Andrew Tate, he's such a nice guy. I wish I had a man like Andrew Tate who felt responsible to protect and provide for me. You know what? I do belong to my husband. That's why I married him and I love him. We ignore the thousands of women who stood up and stood by me and said everything I said is true.
That could be, okay, I do belong to my husband. I do belong to my partner. That doesn't equate to property for me. I mean, it could, but but like maybe because the history of this country, when you think of a woman or think about the history of America, women couldn't vote, the suffrage movement, slavery. To say that another human is your property, it carries all these other connotations with it, and it's just not a good look.
True. And we're taking a very vocal minority who have taken things I've said and are pretending to be absolutely and utterly devastated by them for some reason.
All right.
And let's face it, once again, the people aren't canceling Andrew Tate. The tech companies canceled Andrew Tate. The people don't cancel anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't believe that people have that much. I don't believe that people have that much power. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't believe that people have that much power when it comes to canceling someone. It's really the tech companies deciding, hey, we're going to slide this person to the left. They're no longer going to be on these social platforms. Twitter making the decision to remove Donald Trump. You know, that's not people. That's a company who sees fit for their bottom dollar to kick someone off their platform.
Time out.
Sure.
You've had a good run there.
Sure.
An inquest this week found that a 14-year-old girl, Molly Russell, died from an act of self-harm while suffering from depression. and the negative effects of online content. The coroner said she was exposed to material that may have influenced her in a negative way, and in addition, what started as depression and become a much more serious depressive illness, and she very sadly took her life.
That's absolutely disgusting.
Right. Her father,
It's terrible.
her father's campaign for better protections against potentially dangerous social media algorithms, right? It says that the particularly graphic content she saw romanticized acts of self-harm, normalized her condition, and focused on a limited and irrational view without any counterbalance of normality. First of all, what is your response to that? Nothing to do with you.
That's
the
first thing. Yeah, it is nothing to do with me. The fact that a 14-year-old girl took her life is truly sad. The world we live in today is the world we live in. The fact that something like that happened is almost mind-blowing to me. That's truly sad. I actually feel sad inside to see something like that. This fact that they just said it's romanticizing the gory element. I don't know what she was watching, some kind of suicide videos thing. I don't know where these things are
created. Do you think the tech company?
There are Discord servers that glorify mental illness and use like online bullying in such a way where they cause children to run away from their families, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. So the online world is a dangerous place. It can be for children and people who are easily influenced mentally.
Companies should be much tougher about stuff like this.
I don't know what kind of things she watched, obviously. I have to be a professional here. I think that the tech companies need to do their best to protect people, I guess, to a degree, but it's a slippery slope, isn't it? And then they use this slippery slope to silence some people and to
right. And I think it's a really fine line, and it's a complicated line.
It is very.
I was interested in when you did an interview with the Times. Hugo Rifkin, he's a very good journalist. We did a big interview with him, and it was interesting to me his conclusion, because he kind of concluded that although he found a lot of the things he said.
Do you love the planet?
Also, I want to highlight the fact that when it comes to online content being censored, actually the biggest online folks are generally conservative. I do find that interesting. Like on Facebook, Twitter, like the most popular sites or whatever are conservatives. Uh-oh, now my Wi-Fi want to be slow. Yeah, I wonder if I took a picture of that tweet. I saw this tweet and it was like the top, you know, because conservatives love to say and try to highlight, oh, we're being discriminated against. But meanwhile, all of their accounts are the top accounts online. Uh-oh, what's happening? We're at 111. I'll just try to reload it.
It's a complicated.
There we go.
It is very.
I was interested in when you did an interview with the Times. Hugo Rifkin, he's a very good journalist. We did a big interview with him, and it was interesting to me his conclusion, because he kind of concluded that although he found a lot of the things he said awful and offensive, and he didn't like them, and he didn't want to be that kind of person that would say those kind of things, nor could he actually work out exactly what you'd done, which deserved mass wipeout by all the tech firms. I thought it was an interesting conclusion. I don't know the answer to that, other than the reason I mentioned the Molly Russell case, not because that has anything to do with you at all, and I reiterate that.
Thank you.
So I simply ask you this. What has come clear to me in the interview is that a lot of things you say you wouldn't say now that you've said before.
But I'd say them differently, perhaps.
Yeah, right. So
same thing, right? Like, but he cannot seem weak. He got to keep up this tough guy persona. He would say them differently because, I mean, he could even say that better. He's older now. He has more life experience. Why not rest in that? But anything to not appear weak or, give an apology.
To me, that's an acceptance. Not just that you want to get back on platforms, because maybe that was one of the reasons you were no platform, but that you've recognized and understood the potential harm to the wrong kind of impressionable mind by some of the things you've said. Would that be fair?
I think that's 80% fair. I recognize and understand that with massive fame, you have to be more careful about being misconstrued. Like I said earlier, 1% of people misunderstanding you doesn't matter with a small audience. It matters with a very large audience. With power comes responsibility. I still believe the things I say. I do not want to be a negative force for the world. I also understand that I am a man who's lived a very difficult, nuanced life, and I am capable of making nuanced points that may be misunderstood by teenagers. However, that can be said about anybody and everything. Every opinion online can be misunderstood by children.
Okay.
Trying to protect children from the internet is a very interesting subject in and of itself, because I would argue that 80% of the content on the internet can be negative or detrimental to a young mind that doesn't understand the world.
Yeah.
I'd argue that all of it. We just talked about music videos and dancing on the devil and, all this stuff. This stuff is dangerous.
By the way, I think you make a very good point on that.
So
a lot of these rap stars, the lyrics, the videos, I think far exceed anything that you've been accused of doing.
Completely.
Because in a lot of cases, some of them promote non-consent.
And NBA YoungBoy, and the things he represents, he is the #1 musician on YouTube. I think worldwide, he's like, I don't know, he got millions and millions and millions and millions of views on his videos, if they're real, you know. And he, I don't even listen to him, and I don't really know what he talks about in his lyrics, but I would argue it's probably not good for the community and any of the youth.
Sensual activity with people, right? And I just think that crosses a line you have, as far as I've seen, you haven't crossed that line.
No, I haven't. And this is the thing. And I've been vilified, not because of the things I say, because much more extremist content already exists on the internet. I think the reason I've been attacked and vilified is because of the
That's a good
popularity,
point.
because I became so massively famous, not because of what I was actually saying. So as a professional, I analyze that and I understand that, okay, I'm massively famous.
I can agree with that.
Things have been taken out of context. However, I still do believe I'm a force for good in the world. And I'm not going to sit here
Have
and
you
say,
changed though?
it's not about changing.
Well, it is. We're all involved in an evolution. How old are you now?
I'm 36.
36, right? I bet you're a different person to what you were when you were 26.
Oh, that's
Agreed.
absolutely. That's
right?
absolutely. A
So
fact.
we all change. And Mike, you keep talking about being a good person.
Yeah.
I think if you're honest with yourself, that you can see why people found a lot of the stuff you've said problematic and misogynist. And I think you've recognized you wouldn't express yourself in that way again because you've understood that it's caused a lot of harm. And that's really what I wanted to get to today, was an acknowledgement by you that these things clearly were said in the wrong way, created the wrong impression if you didn't mean them the way you intended them, and can therefore have a malevolent influence when you have a huge following.
And the hard part for him to admit is that's how he got his huge following in the first place. So you're asking someone to basically tear down their own empire and their money machine on live television. So let's see what his response is to this.
Yeah, when you have a huge following, you certainly have to be a lot more careful about how you get certain points across. That's absolutely a fact.
Andrew, I appreciate you coming all the way from Romania.
Thank you.
It's been an interesting conversation, and I thank you for having it.
Cheers, man.
Well, that's it from me. Whatever you're up to, keep it up.
So let's watch this other one that has to do with Andrew Tate real quick. So basically, people came to his defense, and I just think it's interesting. I'm neither here nor there if he should be canceled or whatever. I do think that he said a lot of things that, you know, were admittedly misogynistic. And yeah, I think we discussed that. So this one is just a short video on, yeah, I guess, so people defend him during this.
Social media. Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Andrew Tate is banned from social media for his videos about mainly women. But when exactly does free speech become hate speech, and who should get to decide that? Joining me now, our political journalist Ava Santino and Talk TV contributor Esther Krakow, author and podcaster and friend of Andrew Tate, Leah Haleburn, and Times columnist Hugo Rifkin. Hugo, let me start with you. Thank you for joining the show. I read your big Times interview with this guy, Andrew Tate. I found it very interesting because I knew I was going to interview him on television shortly afterwards. And what I was struck by was that although you were pretty outraged by some of the stuff he said and done and found it personally pretty offensive, you didn't really seem to be able to conclude that he'd really crossed a line that deserved the punishment he's received in terms of social media wipeout. Would that be a fair categorization?
Yes, I wasn't convinced because I'm not quite sure what debate we're having here. It seems a given to me that there would be no place for Andrew Tate on a normal conventional media outlet. They're not going to give him your show. They're not going to give him my show on Times Radio. That wouldn't happen. But it raises the question of whether we think that these tech companies, Instagram, Facebook, companies like that, ought to be being held to the same standards as traditional media. If we think
Yes, that's a great point. And one could argue that there's content on the social media platforms that Andrew Tate was banned from, which I think was, the big four, Facebook, all this stuff, right? That I think he himself deleted Twitch or something like that. But we could argue that there's content on these social media platforms right now that are more egregious than the things that he was saying.
they should be, then obviously he has no place in them. If we think they're actually more of a much more free arena where things that we might find in other places unacceptable are in fact acceptable there, then it becomes a whole different debate. And that's a debate we haven't quite settled, I think.
Right, because, to me, it's like when Trump got removed from Twitter and Facebook and so on. If you're going to let the Ayatollah of Iran continue to have active accounts on these platforms, I don't see the consistency in banning a president of the United States or indeed someone like Andrew Tate.
Yeah, that's quite fair. You've also got to accept that, look,
Very good point.
huge numbers of people wanted to watch him. Huge numbers of people wanted to listen to him. He's very, very good at what he does. In an earlier age, there were people like Andrew Tate who put out cassettes and CDs or were on various forms of pirate radio. They had huge audiences. The audiences are much, much huger now, and they are and much less policed. They have much greater inroads, people like Tate, into teenagers, for example. So it raises whole new questions, whole new issues. I'm not always convinced that just banning them is quite the right answer, but I'm not sure I'd quite like to be making that call myself.
Right. I think that's a really good point. Leah Hailburn, you're in Miami. You know Andrew Tate. You've been to his home in Romania. You know his brother. What kind of guy is he? Many people who don't know much about him will hear some of the stuff he's been saying, which I play to him and challenge him on in the interview, and they'll be horrified. But what do you think?
Why is the pillow square? I'm glad you asked. This is Jay, the inventor of the Pillow Cube. And this is a He's
an incredibly intelligent man. I think what he's doing is very important right now. There's a huge war on masculinity. Men don't really have any kind of role model that they can look up to. Andrew has been very kind and very generous with me. Like I said, I know him personally. I also know him from a business standpoint. I've spent time with him one-on-one. I've never felt uncomfortable. He's never been inappropriate with me. A lot of people accuse him of misogyny. He's never been misogynistic towards me. And I think what he's doing is incredibly important.
Okay, Eva Tantina, your view of this. Just from the exchange we just put a preview of, where he says he prefers 18, 19-year-old women to 25-year-olds. I think you're 25, aren't you? But when he generalizes about 25-year-old women in the really, I thought, pretty repulsive manner that he did in public, I think that is misogyny, actually, because he's branding a whole category of women in a very offensive way.
I think it's close to misogyny. I think it's actually more looking at women as objectively sexual objects, which inherently is misogynistic.
Agreed.
But it's looking for purity in women. What he's essentially saying between those lines is that he wants some sort of virginal woman. Maybe that's why he takes this girl seriously. I don't know. But it kind of sounds a little bit like...
But he's, on the other side, he's allowed to. He can have these views. Does anything that he says, or the stuff that you've seen with him, does it cross a line where he deserves to be expunged from all social media, to be banished from the internet?
When you've got...
I feel like that's the slippery slope. And if this is the case, and if he's banned, then and that's the route they want to take, then a lot more people should be banned from social media, and we should take off, these rap videos and these music videos of glorifying, these acts that are emasculating to a man. For example, like to go and murder somebody How is that not emasculating to a man? Now you're going to jail and you're not going to have your freedom. And we know what happens in jail. I can't go. I'm just saying, like, why not deal with the root of these actual things? If we're going to ban Andrew Tate, then a lot more people probably need to be banned. And even me on this channel, I know that YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, it's like they monitor my content like heavy. I can't say Twitch, but Facebook and YouTube definitely do. And I've seen videos that for me got a copyright strike, but somebody else, I used the content from YouTube and they didn't get a copyright strike. So it is they're very selective about the content. Now, generally speaking, my content is going to be uplifting and edifying. And I don't think, in my opinion, you can see Corey, one of the top YouTubers with like 15 million subscribers. I did a show about him and I think I had to delete it because the sound messed up, but he basically brought it out that he thinks that there's, some racism in the algorithm on how the same thing that happened to me happened to him. Actually, his was taken down for something about violating YouTube policy. And when you have millions and millions of followers, I mean, like 15 million, I think you have a YouTube partner assigned to you. So he went through his YouTube partner, then exposed that the other channel still had their video up and it was not copyright striked, or it was not strike to violate YouTube policy. And then so they removed his strike, which then made him feel emboldened. Like, actually, you all are. He said every time he comes back to YouTube, he'll be trending. And then all of a sudden something will happen, or he'll get a copyright strike or something. And so he said there was like racism within the algorithm. And yeah, I think that content is definitely combed through to support certain things. And maybe the tech companies didn't like the fact that he was messing up other people's money and he was the #1 searched person on all the social media platforms. They couldn't have Andrew Tate being that powerful, and maybe that's why they decided to cancel him. That's the point I was trying to make.
Got to look at the reaction that came off that. So the people who were duetting his videos, or the people who were spreading his messages. When you've got 15-year-old boys espousing these sort of views where you're talking about women in purely sexual terms, and that has come from Andrew Tate, and that's where the problem is.
What do you think?
I don't.
Speaking of race, I wonder if it's because he was affecting a certain demographic. You know what I'm saying? Because it seems that certain content is left on there, from the drill music. We know who's listening to that, the predominant listening demographic. We know, we can assume what those people look like. And just like we can assume what type of person was listening to Andrew Tate. And maybe because the demographic he was affecting, I wonder if that played a role in them canceling Andrew Tate. Let me know what you think.
I don't actually think that's a very fair assessment. He didn't say, oh, I only date 19-year-olds, I prefer. He was making the point, and he could have phrased it better, absolutely. But he's saying
which he did concede, actually,
yeah,
late
exactly.
in the interview.
But the point he's making is, and he's a very intelligent guy, like Leah was saying, so he knows what he's doing when he's saying that. Obviously, he's got a massive reaction from it, so clearly it's worked. But the point is, he's saying that younger women who have had less experience with men in general are more desirable because they don't come with a certain amount of baggage. Now, you could say there are women that are more experienced that come with less baggage because they know what they want, or they're more mature mentally.
But my view is you shouldn't be talking about women in that generalized way at all of any age group. I know a lot of 25-year-old women in my time, they're all very different. It's like the idea that you bracket them all in this revolting way, which he did, which is just a lad in the nightclub kind of way. It's fine, but
that's a generalization.
To do it with a big following, I think, is a malevolent influence.
And what is implied there is their sexual history. That is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly what he's talking about, which I agree makes it misogynistic. And also because it's not, he doesn't have, like, he can date 6 or 7 women at the same time, and that's not an issue, but there's a different standard for women. I just don't understand that.
But there are women that are 18 that have a more elaborate sexual history.
Well, let me ask Hugo. Hugo, you spent quite a lot of time with him for your big interview for the Times. What did you actually make of him by the end? When you came away, what did you think of him?
Oh, we got on very well, but then we were two men sitting in his cigar room, bantering. You know, we had a good chat and a very honest chat. I mean, we had a very similar conversation to the conversation you're having at the moment. I think in different circumstances, I wouldn't have liked to introduce him to my wife. I wouldn't have liked to have to hang out with him with my female friends. I think that'd be intensely uncomfortable. But I noticed the way that at the moment, what we're doing, we're debating whether or not he's nice, whether or not the things he thinks are nice or right. What we're not debating is whether or not they should be allowed.
Right.
And I think it's slightly.
I agree with that. That's a great point.
Worries me that we've drifted into thinking those are the same debates.
I agree. When did we already become the moral arbiters for whether people should be allowed a social media platform? I mean, let me go back to Leia. I mean, to me, you might find Andrew Tate's views offensive, unsavory, misogynist, as I did on some occasions with him, although he made some concessions in the interview. I'm not sure by the end that I concluded he'd done anything really so heinous he deserved the punishment he's got. That was my real conclusion, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I don't think he said anything wrong. I think all he's doing is talking about reality. And I don't think it's misogynistic to say you prefer a woman that's 18 versus 25.
He could have just said he prefers that, and it still, probably would have a sting because society has, moved in our social and moral category, I think in some ways in positive aspects. So I think it still would be an issue, but it wouldn't be taken as misogynistic. And let's not act like it was just one thing that Andrew Tate said that now all of a sudden he's misogynistic. No, there were things that he said over and over and over again. These views that he espoused that were radical and were catching all this attention, and young people were following him. I do think that's problematic. I don't know how to address it per se.
It's literally just a sexual preference. It's the same reason
but
why
that's
young
not. I
women
don't
prefer older
just to
men.
jump in. I don't think.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's the misogyny. I had this argument with my sons earlier when they saw the clip. The misogyny isn't that he has a preference for girls of 18, 19, or 25. The misogyny is in the way he talks about every woman who's 25,
but that's
as
just
if
an
they're all the
emotional
same
reaction.
and they've all been
But that's
through
just
this
an emotional
tawdry background, which he finds so distasteful. That's obviously ludicrous.
Well, I think he speaks with a lot of hyperbole.
So she said that's an emotional reaction. Well, that's exactly what he uses. He uses emotional reactions to then, that's what props him up. That's what makes him this polarizing figure. He used and found a niche to where he could generate a lot of action and engagement around these controversial topics and saying these controversial things.
His goal was to go viral. Obviously, as Esther mentioned, not all 25-year-old women have been sleeping with every single man that they meet in the nightclub. So there's always exceptions. But I just think in general, a 25-year-old woman obviously has had more experience than an 18-year-old woman. And some men prefer that. Some men don't like that. And I think that's completely fine. I think what really scares me is the censorship that we see online. On Twitter, there's actually porn on Twitter. You have terrorists on Twitter. And yet a man who's just talking about reality and the real dynamics between men
you
and
know
women,
what? I got to say,
very good point.
To say, Leia, I think you make a good point. I think the Taliban have Twitter accounts. The Ayatollah of Iran, he's threatened to wipe out Israel, has a Twitter account. Donald Trump doesn't. Andrew Tate doesn't. Why? I can't really get a satisfactory response from these platforms. So it's a very interesting debate, I think, to be had. We're going to run the full interview with Andrew Tate. The whole thing will appear on YouTube by the end of the week.
What do y'all think about the previous president, Donald Trump? I think there's a viewer on here. Let me know what you think. Should he have been banned from social media? Technically speaking, he's not banned. I mean, he has his shows on. Somebody always puts his rallies at least on YouTube. But do you think him being the president played a role in him being banned? Let me know.
We're going to run a good hour of it later in the week. It is a fascinating watch, I have to say. And you might like him, you might hate him. But the real question is, should he be banned? Thank you to my panel. Thank you to...
Yeah, I don't know if he should be banned or not. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Andrew Tate and getting to know some of the things that he said and how he really thinks. I did not know him prior to watching this video. I didn't know him very much prior to him being banned, but I figured, since he is such a figure that's like, polarizing and being banned from social media, maybe it would be good to have some conversation about it. And I think we did discover that whether he does or not, I guess, he does have some misogynistic views, but I think in some ways, even with that, that's just my opinion of his views, and they don't seem to be ones that he would act out in a harmful way, but I'm not sure, and I don't know him personally. But I do think we're living in an age where you have to be responsible with the things that you're saying. And I think that's a lesson and something that we can all practice spiritually, to understand that life and death is in the power of the tongue, and that we should speak blessings and not curses. And when we influence people, there is a measure of accountability. And that's really what I take from this. And then I was glad, if you're watching this at the end, more towards the middle or towards the beginning, I read from Ephesians, where I think, because a lot of people get this idea of emasculation and masculinity. They say masculinity is under attack, and they try to use the Bible to do this and stuff. And then the idea of men submitting to women and women submitting to men. I think that whole scripture verse in Ephesians I think chapter 5 gets taught wrong, because the greater submission is actually from the man. As the scriptures say, love his wife as Christ loved the church. And we know that Christ laid his life down for the church, for his people, for the people of the world. So, that's just some of my thoughts on that. And it's been almost 3 hours. So I'm going to get off here now. Thank you for rocking with Combo Blueprint with Zion. You can find all my social media links at IBelieveTemple.com. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And I'll catch you in the next one. I'll probably do a video on Kanye West in the morning. Yeah, I'll probably do the two, maybe I'll do two separate ones, because he did two separate ones on Tucker Carlson. And I just want to discuss, some of the things that he says in there. Another polarizing figure. I guess a lot of people just love to do antics that keep them in the public light. And so let's talk about it from a spiritual aspect, and maybe, glean something spiritual from it. So I hope you have a good day, good night, or a good morning. Catch you on the next one. Peace.